Hello, this is Gonzalo Lira speaking to you live, and this is the Roundtable episode number 40. Today, I am talking to NATO supporters, Destiny and LazerPig. I think it's going to be a very exciting show. I've been really looking forward to this broadcast. I'm going to bring on my guests in just a little bit, but I wanted to give a brief introduction so that you know why I'm so interested in talking to NATO supporters. Because as you've seen in my previous roundtables, most of the people are highly critical of NATO and how it's conducted this war. And so I figured that I ought to bring in, people on the other side of the coin, as it were. And so here I am. And I had looked far and wide, and finally, all I did was just tweet about it. And Destiny and LazerPig were gracious enough to agree to come on the show. And like I said, I'm going to bring them on in just a little bit. But the first thing I wanted to say are a couple of things that have come up, unfortunately, with both Destiny and LazerPig's audiences. That many NATO supporters think that I'm lying about what has happened to me and where I'm at. Okay. They believe that I have lied about being arrested back in April 15th of 2022. I was arrested on the 15th and held incommunicado for a week. And a lot of people, NATO supporters, say that this is just, I made it up and it was just an attention, a way to get attention and so forth and so on. Well, I just want to say that to those people who believe that I have shown the documentary evidence of my situation to other content creators, specifically Alex Christoforou, and also my personal attorneys and other personal people. But insofar as the online world is concerned, Alex has seen my documentation of my arrest. So, and also Braving Ruin, but Braving Ruin has dropped out of sight insofar as the internet, which is a pity. But anyway, so Alex Christoforou has that documentation. Okay, and insofar as that experience is concerned, well, I was interrogated a few times. And it wasn't that bad. It wasn't pleasant, but it is what it is. And they were doing what they were ordered to do, so I bear them no ill will. The SBU, if you don't know, is the State Security Services of Ukraine. It's sort of like the FBI, CIA rolled up into one, insofar as Ukraine is concerned. And it was not pleasant. Let's leave it at that. But they were doing what they had been ordered to do, and I was doing as my conscience dictated. Okay. But the important thing is that there is documentary proof of my being held and arrested and interrogated and all the rest of it. At this time, I'm not releasing it. Once this conflict is over, no problem. The other thing that a lot of NATO supporters insist on is that I'm not in Kharkov. And they keep insisting that I show video of where I live, of like the skyline of the city. Okay. Now, the fact is, I am in Kharkov, and I have repeatedly shown to different content creators who have come on my show various landmarks of the city of Kharkov that prove indisputably that I'm here in the city. I mean, landmarks that I can see from my apartment, and so I've proved it to those people. Okay, and they can say it. Just about all the guests I've had, I've shown it to them. I mean, Clint Ehrlich, Alex Christoforou, Brian Berletic. I mean, the usual suspects. So they know that I'm here. And I even showed them one of the great picture that I took, because the building next to my own in early September was hit by a missile, a Russian missile. And I got this perfect shot of it, right? Because the missile hit a building next to my own building, but on the other side, because my apartment faces in one direction and the building that was hit was on the opposite direction. So nothing happened to my apartment, but the stairwell, because the electricity got cut, okay? And so you had to go up and down the stairs. And on the stairwell, I saw the picture, this huge hole, and I took a picture of it. It was a great picture, and I can't share it because it shows the Kharkov skyline. It would be no trick at all to triangulate where I am. And I can't afford to do that. See, I don't want to reveal my location publicly I don't want to give any kind of video or photographic evidence that would help people figure out where I am because of a very simple reason. And the simple reason is this. This is the Mirotvorets hit list. Okay. And a lot of people who troll me want me very badly to reveal my location. Now, the Mirotvorets list that you're seeing right here, this is and let me just scroll a little so you can see it's a real thing. And I can't, unfortunately, put this link in the description right now while I'm live, but as soon as the show is over, I'll put it up. So you'll see it there. Anyway, the point of this, oh, you know what I can do while we're here? I can just clip the link and post it in chat so that you can all see it for yourselves and know that I'm not making this up. Okay. Just posted it on the chat. Okay. So the reason I'm bringing this up is that, there are a lot of people who'd like to kill me. See, because this list, the so-called peacemaker list, is a list of people who are considered unfriendly to the Zelensky regime. And these people who are considered unfriendly, well, they are being encouraged to be, they are fomented to kill these people. And there are all kinds of people here. I mean, there's everybody from Vladimir Putin to Sergei Lavrov, who I don't think are really worried about this list, to people in the United States, people like Scott Ritter, people like Eva Bartlett. I mean, a whole bunch of people. And I'm on it too. I've been on it since June. And I'm not particularly concerned about the SBU because the SBU knows exactly where I'm at. And the SBU realizes that I'm just a middle-aged YouTuber who presents no threat to them at all. On the contrary, I'm much more problems for them than it's worth their time because I'm not, a military guy or intelligence guy. I'm just commenting shit. And there's like a lot of different people in several different countries where I have residency who'd be very pissed off if I just vanished, right? But there are a lot of crazies who'd love to knock me off. You go on this website, right? And whenever somebody on this website is assassinated, they put an X and they celebrate it. Now, why am I bringing up this site? Well, because you see, this site, the internet being what it is, 4chan and Poll being who they are, they trace the IP address of this website. And you know where the IP address led to? It led to NATO headquarters in Brussels. See? And so you see my situation. I mean, NATO is essentially, specifically targeting me for assassination, man. I mean, my name is on this hit list. They want everybody on this list dead. And this website is being run out of Brussels, out of NATO headquarters there. Okay. And so I have a vested interest in knowing what people, how could I put this? Let me rephrase this. I have a vested interest in NATO, and I have a vested interest in making it clear what NATO is actually doing because they actively want me dead. I mean, if they didn't, I wouldn't be on this hit list. If they didn't, they wouldn't be hosting this website encouraging people to assassinate any and all names on this website. See? So my thinking is that most people live their lives and they sort of like randomly pay attention to stuff and don't really care. So I'm figuring that most NATO supporters are ignorant about what NATO is up to, right? I mean, that seems to be reasonable, that they're ignorant about what NATO is about. Or it could be that they're not ignorant. They actually know what NATO is up to. And so since they know what NATO is up to, then what's really going on is that, see, they're evil. And they know about this list, about the targeted assassinations, and they know that, what what you call it, what NATO is really up to. Okay, so I figure it'd be interesting to have a discussion with my two guests to figure out if they are ignorant or not. Now, let me bring on my guests right now. My guests are Destiny, Stephen Bennell. How's it going? Good to see you. And here we have LazerPig. LazerPig, how's it going? Good to meet you finally.
Why, hello.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure. Stephen, how are you? It's been a long time since you and I have spoken. Stephen and I have known each other since nothing specific. We've just, sort of like share the same space on YouTube, I suppose you could say.
Yeah, hey, what's up?
How's it going? Good to see you. Whoops, hang on a second. Let me just, before we get to that, because the thing is, see, I want to do this conversation with you both as NATO supporters, because you both
can I just interrupt you?
Wait, hang on. Yeah,
Right.
you'll have plenty of time. And in
Okay.
fact, I'm going to wind down and you guys will be able to talk all you want. But I just want to say a few things before I get derailed. See, what we're going to do is that we're going to have like a structured conversation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up on screen a series of statements, and they're very simple statements, and they're not kind of like gotcha statements or anything like that. Nothing like minutia or depending on obscure information. No, it's going to be very straightforward questions, and they're true/false statements. And I'd really like to listen to what you guys have to say. So go ahead, LazerPig. You wanted to say?
Oh wait, oh my God! Before LazerPig, actually, could I just ask like 2 questions real quick? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. Because that intro was something else. The that website, you said it traces back to NATO?
Yeah.
How can you do that?
Well, I don't know the specifics of that, but it has been, and it's been confirmed repeatedly by different people who know what they're doing.
Can I interject?
I specifically got somebody that I know on tech to figure it out, and they were like, yeah, it goes back to, and he listed the IP addresses and the whole shebang. So yeah,
gotcha.
If you want, I can send you that information. It'd have to be a separate email.
Okay, yeah, that'd be cool. I only wanted to say real quick before we hop on everything, and then LazerPig, you can go. That website, I did a DNS lookup because I was curious. It's hosted on Cloudflare. You're never pulling an IP address off that website.
I don't know how it was done, but
I understand. I'm just saying. I see on Twitter where somebody has linked the site back to NATO URL. I'm looking at it right now. All they did was they did an inspect element, and they're looking at a link to a video on the site, and the link to that video might go to a NATO website, but the site itself is not hosted on NATO. If it's a Cloudflare domain, you'd never be able to look it up.
If that's what you think, that's perfectly fine. But I have independent corroboration, and I can send it to you. So there we go. Okay, LazerPig, you wanted to say something?
Hi, can you hear me? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Good. It's great to have you on. It was very.
I've been told to make myself a little bit louder. I have perhaps been drinking a little bit too much over the past few days, and I have a bit of a sore throat. But I have some tea here, so that's quite nice. But I want to ask you a question. I'd rather take objection to you calling me pro-NATO. I've never ever stated that I'm pro-NATO. I don't think I've ever mentioned that I'm pro-NATO. I don't think I've ever stated it anywhere that I'm pro-NATO. I'm not pro-NATO. I'm pro-Ukraine.
So you're pro-Zelensky regime?
I'm pro-Ukraine, and I'm pro...
No. I said specifically pro-Zelensky regime or anti-Zelensky regime?
I'm pro-Zelensky regime.
Then you're pro-NATO.
Okay.
Because the Zelensky regime is allied with NATO, and that's pretty obvious. And so there's
right.
That. Oh, and by the way, I'm just going to go outside. I'm muting my camera just to step outside and smoke a cigarette. So go ahead.
Okay, well, I would disagree that being pro-Ukraine is also...
The Zelensky regime is allied with NATO. The Zelensky regime is getting weapons from NATO. The Zelensky regime is getting private military contractors from NATO. The Zelensky regime has begged to be a part of NATO, and NATO is supplying it with everything it can at this time. So to say that you are pro-Zelensky means that you are pro-NATO.
Right. Okay. That's an interesting stance to take, but I'm going to state that I am not pro-NATO. I'm pro-Ukraine. I'm pro people fighting for the sovereignty of their own nation against a fascist regime intent on their extermination. If or not you believe that, I do not give a shit about NATO. I will not have my position dictated to me. I know who I am. I know what
you are supporting NATO. You are a NATO supporter. So that's
Ukraine.
That.
I'm here to talk about Ukraine, and I will speak on Ukraine. If you cared about Ukraine,
you'd be interested in peace. But you're not interested in peace. You're interested in more war. You're pro-NATO, period.
I'm sorry.
Well, can we to bridge the two here? Like, is it not possible to support one side without supporting every single party supporting that side?
No, I mean,
That's not the issue.
Mr.
He says
I'm
that
sorry.
he's
Is it?
pro-Ukraine. I'm pro-Ukraine. I want the devastation to end as quickly as possible. But of course, NATO wants to prolong it, and he seems to be very happy with that. So therefore, he is pro-NATO and pro-war and pro-killing Ukrainian people and the,
Well,
the
I think
destruction of the Ukrainian nation.
Well, wait, hold on, because hold on. Jeez, I'm sorry, it's
Okay,
early.
well,
I'm trying to
before
figure.
we get into that, let's get into
Well, wait,
the topic.
are we going to have an actual discussion, or is
yes,
it
we're
going
going to have an actual discussion that's structured as I see fit. That's
okay, but then like I think we can like walk through point to point. We don't have to be like, well, he's
okay,
pro-Ukraine, so he's pro-NATO, so he wants to kill Ukrainians.
The first thing that we're going to
this.
talk about, and if I have to mute you because you keep interrupting, I'll mute you. The first thing we're going to talk about is true or false. The Kiev regime was doing nothing to provoke Putin into invading Ukraine. Putin's invasion was groundless. Putin has imperial ambitions and is inherently evil. Is this true or false? LazerPig?
We can only answer with one word for it. These are really loaded statements.
Yeah,
well, go ahead, answer them. They're very clear. True or false?
I mean, Destiny, do you want to take this one, or shall I take the flag here?
Well, I mean, like we're using conjunctions here in ways that are pretty complicated. I mean, like you can argue that there are a lot of things that a country
true
could
or
do.
False? These are very simple statements, Stephen. If you can't answer them, then
we're talking about
you don't want to answer them because you know
these are
the answer
really
is something that's
these
gonna
are
hurt your
really
position.
these are
Did
complicated geopolitical
the
issues. You can't do a true or false.
Provoke Putin into invading Ukraine? Yes or no? This is simple.
No.
It did not provoke Putin into invading Ukraine. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. LazerPig, did the Kiev regime do anything to provoke Putin into invading Ukraine? Yes or no?
Well, let's say for the moment, let's play devil's advocate here.
Yes or no? The Kiev regime was
doing
nothing to provoke Putin into invading Ukraine. Yes or no? It's simple, LazerPig. Answer the question.
Are you going to let me talk, or are you going to scream at me like a child?
I'm asking you a straightforward question. It's simple. Yes
no,
or no?
I'm sorry. You invited me here under the premise that I would have my chance to speak, and you would not interrupt me, and this would be a civilized discussion.
Go ahead.
Are you sure? I'm going to speak, and you're not going to interrupt me, are you? Good. So let's take the stance that the Kiev regime, the Zelensky regime, I love that word, regime. Let's take that that they have provoked this. They have done something to provoke Putin. About 7,000 civilians, Ukrainian civilians, have died. Many of those Russian birth or with Russian heritage. Exactly how does their death, how does the targeting of civilians, wholesale slaughter of civilians,
that's a lie,
justify?
They have not been targeted. They have not been targeted
specifically.
How does that? I'm here in the country
justify
to know that is not accurate. That is a lie.
Are we allowed to just go out and murder civilians because, oh no, Putin's feelings, everybody, he's a bit intimidated by NATO. Oh no. One of the richest people on the planet is a little bit scared, so therefore
why don't you tell me about the 16,000 killed by the Zelensky and Poroshenko regime in the period 2015 to 2022? Why don't you tell me about those 16,000 killed by the Kiev regime in the past 7 years?
Lira, am I allowed to go outside with a shotgun and start killing Christians because I'm a bit threatened by the Westboro Baptist Church?
Is it true or false that the Kiev regime has been constantly shelling the Donbass region before the conflict started on February 24th, and that in total 16,000 Ukrainians were killed by the Kiev regime in the Donbass? Is it true or false?
Shelling the Donbass? The vast majority of all of the shelling that's happened has occurred on the border where all the fighting is. They're not shooting like deep into.
No, this was before. Number one, that's a lie, because currently the Kiev regime, the Zelensky regime, is shelling the city of Donetsk.
Why are you saying? You're saying currently, but before you were talking 2014 to 2022. You can see maps of where all of the artillery. You are saying. Well, let me finish. Can I finish my one sentence? You can go right now and you can Google You can Google shell strike map Donbass, or you can Google artillery strike map Donbass or whatever, and you can see where all of the shells have fallen. They're all on the border where the conflict is happening. Ukraine is not firing
the city
arms
of
into the
Donetsk,
cities.
in the middle of the city of Donetsk, where there are no military, it's only civilians, and they continue doing this during the conflict. That's what the Kiev regime has been doing. Now, before the conflict started, for the 7 years between 2015 and 2022, the Kiev regime was indiscriminately shelling the Donbass region, resulting in the deaths of 16,000 civilians. So, LazerPig, you're talking about 7,000 casualties, civilian casualties during the current conflict, but you're neglecting the 16,000 that were indiscriminately butchered by the Kiev regime. Why don't you talk about that, LazerPig? I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Well, I love the fact that we're not even half an hour into this discussion and you're already trying to force this black and white fallacy on us. I mean, you've answered the question, right? That said, ignore evil. That is false. Putin did not invade Ukraine because of that. He might have claimed that he did.
Okay.
If you give me 2 seconds here, I mean, because it's. Sorry, I had something written down here. Yeah, because the thing is, as Russian tanks were massing on the border of Ukraine, just prior to this invasion, Putin did this
in 2015, in 2016, in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, and the first months of 2022, 16,000 people were killed by the Kiev regime, even though there was supposed to be a ceasefire brokered by the Minsk II agreements.
Those ceasefires were violated.
It was not violated by the Russians. It was violated by the Kiev regime, where they were shelling their own people.
Nobody held to either of the Minsk Accords. For these 16,000 dead numbers, are you trying to claim that these are all civilians? Just curious, so I can get an understanding of this.
As I understand it, yes, it is. As I understand it, something like 900 of them were children under the age of 10.
Okay, the idea that all of these were children, or that, I'm sorry, that all of these were civilians is not true. I don't know where you even pulled that from. Even the 16,000 number is a bit high. Well,
so you're denying the reporting on the ground of people who have been there and have watched the shelling, the indiscriminate shelling of civilian areas by the Kiev regime from 2015 to 2022.
It's an active civil war that's being supported on the Russian side. Of course, there are going to be casualties.
There was the Minsk II agreement that was brokered by the French and the Germans.
The Minsk II agreements were violated by both sides. They were never the Minsk II agreements. I think barely even got off the ground.
Did Russia violate the sovereignty of Ukraine prior to February 24th, 2022? Yes or no?
Yes, by invading Crimea and stealing the Crimea Peninsula. Yes,
so that was in 2014.
Yes, you said before 2022. So
okay,
yes,
fair enough. Between 2015 and 2022, did they do so?
Yes, they did, by having active military members on the ground in the Donbass, which is internationally recognized.
Private military contractors and NATO personnel that were in Ukraine.
No, those were actual Russian troops, and Putin has since admitted that.
Part of that 16,000
really?
dead.
Where? I'd love to see that.
Part of that 16,000 dead includes actual Russian troops on the ground.
Oh,
and
really?
Yes, of course. They call it. What? Do you want to see the bodies?
No, show me. Show me some evidence. You're making a claim that everybody who knows the conflict, and I know the conflict because I am here. Everybody who knows this conflict knows that that's a lie.
Have you gone and looked at all the troops?
OHCHR report. You can look at the UN report, and it will from 2014 to 2016. It will dictate 3,000 civilian deaths on both sides.
Okay, so the issue is to return to the structure of this. Putin invaded Ukraine, and these are true false. Putin invaded Ukraine because, number one, the constant shelling of ethnic Russians in the Donbass since 2014. Number two, the Kiev regime figures, calling for the ethnic cleansing of all Russians from the Donbass and Ukraine generally. Number three, NATO expansion into Ukraine with the likelihood of nuclear weapons on Russia's doorstep, which was considered an existential threat by the Russians. Is any of these statements false?
Yes.
All of them are false, yes.
That's not
constant
true.
shelling of ethnic Russians in the Donbass. That statement is so misleading that it is
That
false.
is true. It's
Kiev
true.
regime
It's
figures
true.
calling for
It's
ethnic
true.
cleansing
Just
of
you
all
saying
Russians.
that it's
That is
misleading
also
does
false.
not make it false.
NATO expansion into Ukraine with the likelihood of nuclear weapons on Russia's doorstep. I mean, the
Yes,
Baltics are in NATO. We don't have nuclear
January of
weapons up there, so that's also
2022
false.
at
So all
Munich,
three of these statements are false.
Zelensky.
Do you want us to answer, or is this just like you giving a lecture?
Because I know, and you're lying.
Oh, well. Okay, my bad. I'm sorry.
I'm
Why
sorry,
am I
I'm
even
too
here to
sober
talk
for
if you're
this.
just going to say that I'm lying? What's the
Because
point of
you
this?
are lying.
Wait, okay. I'm just curious. What is the point of this conversation? Just talk to me.
This point of my conversation is to determine whether you are ignorant or evil. That's the point of this conversation.
Okay, so this isn't an actual conversation on any of these matters. This is just kind of like
This
you wanted
is
to
me
reach out and
trying
kind
to
of preach.
find out if NATO supporters, such as both of you, are ignorant or evil.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right. Okay.
Um,
Can I ask a quick question?
Go ahead.
Define evil.
The opposite of the good.
Define good.
The opposite of evil.
Okay. I'm not really sure where to go with that. It is.
Are any of
It
these
is the way.
statements false?
It is the way it is because it is the way it is, and I say it the way it is. You know. Therefore, I define evil as a duck because a duck is evil.
Okay. Did Kiev regime
Because ducks
figures
reproduce
call for
by
the ethnic
fucking
cleansing
raping
of
each
all
other. Therefore, that
Russians
is
from
evil.
Donbass?
Therefore, evil is ducks. I'm not a duck.
Is-
Therefore, I'm not evil.
Did the Kiev regime figures call for the ethnic cleansing of all ethnic Russians from the Donbass and Ukraine generally? Yes or no?
No.
Yes, they
Okay,
did. There are
LazerPig, I love you,
videos
buddy.
of people of the,
Good luck with
of
this.
the right sector.
but
If you quit, if you rage
I don't know if
quit
he's been
because you
knocked out a few
can't stand
times and he's
it,
having
if
some
you can't
stroke
stand the
issues or
heat,
what.
that's
But I
your
think
problem.
he's got some problems going on there.
I'm
Neurological.
gonna.
I have got
I mean,
problems.
I have.
These
my own
are
problems.
internet
I'm
blood
gonna be
sports
completely
rules,
honest with you.
Destiny.
The
guy who rage
thing
quits is the guy who loses.
Okay,
The
well,
thing
it
is-
looks like I'm the loser here. I think stepping into this call made me a loser, so I'm sorry, my dude. Good luck. Don't get killed.
I have the one question that I have always been consistently asked is, why am I doing this? Why am I here? I have nothing to gain from this, and honestly, I mean, I've seen your previous videos, Lira. I've seen your previous roundtable discussions and your opinions on Twitter. You have a very pro-Russian attitude, and you have remained
No, I
defiantly in
don't.
that position
I'm
in the face
I
of
am
what I would
indifferent
call
to both sides.
overwhelming
When I see
evidence to the
evil,
contrary.
I call it.
I
as
don't
such.
fully believe I can convince you to change your mind, nor
I
think you
think
can
that
change mine.
you're basically saying that you
And I
know
think
that your
the
positions are
same
false, and
applies
therefore
to
you
our
can't
respect
stand
for
the fact that you are supporting the wrong side in a conflict that is clearly between goodness and the endurance of the Ukraine nation and people, and the destruction of the Ukraine nation and people, which you claim to love, but actually your actions, by your support of the NATO war, it just shows that you are basically all about destroying Ukraine.
I think the bargain your Pinot Noir for this one. I think. Look, I don't believe I can convince you to change your mind. Nor I think
I'm not
you to
interested
change
in
your mind.
being convinced.
I
want
think
to hear
the
your
same
position.
applies to a respectful audience here. So I'm going to be with you. I'm not here to change your mind. I'm not here to lecture.
So
I'm here
you can't
completely
disprove
out of
anything that I'm
morbid
saying.
curiosity.
Is that what you're
I'm
saying?
genuinely curious what you have to ask me, and I have some questions of my own. But
Go
I do
ahead.
have other things I need to do tonight. I'm not going to sit here all night. I was expecting to be here for maybe an hour and a half, potentially, and then I was going to let you and Destiny do your wonderful
Destiny
thing.
chickened out. You know, he rage quit like a little bitch.
Well, Destiny has left, and to be honest, I don't blame him. You're not acting civil.
I am acting civil, but I'm calling out liars when I hear lies.
These are lines from Russian propaganda. These are lines from the 5,000.
This is the truth.
Words
this is
treaty
the truth.
That
and
Putin
you
wrote.
claiming that it's Russian propaganda doesn't change the fact that it's true.
But it is Russian propaganda.
So what? The Russians can say that the sky is blue. Is that Russian propaganda? Or are you going to ask me to define what is blue?
Do you not understand what propaganda is?
Yes, I know exactly what propaganda is. Do you know what is true and what is false?
You know what? You know what? You know what?
What?
I think we can have very reasonable sounding discussion points. But let me ask you, going back to the previous
There are
point.
3 points
Let
on
me
the
let me go
outline.
let me go back to the
Ask
previous
tell me
point
if they are true
you
or
brought up.
false.
Okay.
Mhm.
Why do you think Russia holds a monopoly on morality?
Nobody holds a
Why is it
monopoly on
Russia that
morality.
gets to decide what is right and just in this war?
Nobody gets to decide what's right and just, but I do have a judgment, and I want to hear your judgment. Are any of these statements false?
These
It's
statements
very
are false.
clear,
The
LazerPig.
final statement, NATO expansion into Ukraine, I would potentially agree with that. I think Putin is very scared of that. I mean, there was nothing to ever state that Ukraine was ever interested in joining NATO. They were interested in joining the EU.
The 2008 declaration by NATO at Budapest said explicitly that Georgia and Ukraine should join NATO.
Should join NATO.
And they created the conditions where that would happen.
Believe
the station at Yavoriv
honey,
was,
please.
Don't call me honey, Piggy.
Please.
Piggy,
I believe
are we going to be civil, or are you going to
give me free wine. I believe that Tesco should give me free wine, but they don't. It's not up to NATO if or not Ukraine joins. It's up to Ukraine. And Zelensky made it very clear when he started.
So it's okay if there are nuclear weapons in Cuba threatening the United States? I mean, if Cuba decides to join the Chinese military alliance and install nuclear weapons on Cuban soil aimed at the United States, that should be no problem whatsoever, right?
What has that got to do with anything?
Because the Zelensky regime was saying in January of 2022 that it would be a great idea for NATO to put nuclear weapons in Ukraine. And none of the other leaders at the Munich conference disputed him. They were basically tacitly agreeing that it was a good idea.
Has any two nuclear, since the end of the Second World War, has any two nuclear nations gone to war?
They came close in '62 in Cuba.
They very much did, yes.
Why?
But did they?
Why?
But did they? They did not.
Why did they almost go to war? We all know the answer to the question of did they go to war or not. They obviously didn't. Why did they almost go to war? That's the salient question. You're avoiding the salient question because you know the answer, and the answer is something that you don't want to face. So I'm asking. I don't
want to face the idea that in response to NATO moving nukes closer to Russia, Russia moved nukes closer to America in Cuba, and that caused tensions to rise between.
It almost caused a nuclear war, didn't it?
It almost did, but it did not.
Yeah, that's not the point. It could have. And a lot of people who were there said that there was a possibility of something like 15 minutes, the possibility of a nuclear conflict because of what Russia had done, the Soviet Union rather, had done in '62 in Cuba. So it's not something irrelevant.
So what was your point?
So are any of these statements true or false? Answer them.
They're all false.
They're all true.
Okay. So your opinion is they're true.
No, it's not an opinion.
My opinion is they're false.
There is a difference between a statement of fact and an opinion. There are no opinions here. These are all factually accurate.
I would disagree, but let's agree to disagree.
You would disagree, okay?
Does that make me ignorant or evil?
So it makes you not ignorant. And there are two.
So there's a third option.
So you figure it out.
So you've given me two options: am I ignorant or evil? And you've already dictated my position, which I've said that I don't shit about.
If we're going to be honest, but the fact is, I want to show you that you are wrong, and from there, it's your decision.
You don't want to hear my judgment. You don't want to hear my opinion. You want to frame me.
Okay.
This is what I feared. This is honestly what I feared coming on here. I feared that this would just be you shouting at me.
Did you ask me in the DMs that you and I swapped if I was scared of you?
Are you scared of me?
I found that very amusing.
Are you scared of me?
Not really.
You're acting like it.
I don't think so, because you're unwilling to answer true or false statements.
I'm not going to be pushed into a black and white fallacy.
These are accurate statements. Anybody who knows about the conflict can look through them and say, that's true, that's true, that's true. If you don't want to admit that they're true, then you want to remain consciously ignorant, or you're evil.
What makes them true?
The Kiev regime figures calling for the ethnic cleansing of all Russians from the Donbass and Ukraine generally. This has been open policy by the right sector and the Azov and the other different militia groups within the Kiev regime. This is known fact. And they have said so repeatedly, openly. It's no trick at all to Google these videos, and you hear them say that they want the destruction of all ethnic Russians in the Donbass and in Ukraine generally.
The Azov Legion.
Right sector.
Right. Excuse me. So it's not part of Zelensky's actual
It is part
policy.
of the Zelensky regime, because Zelensky has outlawed all political parties except the ones that are calling for the ethnic cleansing of ethnic Russians from the Donbass region. And by the way, those first two reasons, the constant shelling of ethnic Russians and the calling for ethnic cleansing, those are the two reasons that NATO went to war over Serbia and destroyed Serbia and bombed Kosovo. Those were the alleged reasons. And these are happening now in Ukraine. The fact that you are unwilling to admit that they're true leads me to conclude that you'd also oppose what NATO did in Serbia. Do you oppose what NATO did in Serbia? Do you think that the Serbs should have gone ahead and ethnically cleansed whomever they were ethnically cleansing? I'm not that familiar with the conflict.
Of course not. That'd be a ridiculous notion to take.
Okay, so you think it is reasonable to prevent an ethnic cleansing of an entire people from a region that is adjacent to yours? That's what NATO did in Serbia, and so that's what the Russians are doing insofar as Ukraine is concerned, among other things.
That is why I support Ukraine. I go back to your other points.
You support Ukraine even though
right-wing
ethnic
cabal.
Russians who are Ukrainian are openly targeted for extermination?
The Azov Legion was founded by ethnic Russians.
You and I know that that's not true. They were founded by hooligans from the Medalist Football Club. They were financed by Igor Kolomoisky, and they were set up as a paramilitary organization funded and supported and trained by NATO. Same thing happened with the right sector after 2015.
Well, if they're trained and funded by NATO, then I'm sorry, but they're shit. Because I've seen them fight.
They're dead now.
Their spacing is awful. Their tactics are awful. They've got no coordination. They look absolutely nothing like a NATO unit. They look like a rabble. They look like a militia. And that's exactly how they act. Because, let's be honest,
we're talking about those
they're not NATO funded.
You
need them. You need them to be NATO funded because it fits your narrative. But we both
they
know
are NATO funded and trained.
Don't raise your voice at me, young man.
Oh, what are you going to do? Squeal some more?
Yeah, I'm a pig. Oink, bitch.
Oh, buddy. I knew that this was going to devolve into this.
I mean, if you want to take a step back and you want to have a proper discussion. We're going to go on to
the next slide.
Okay.
We're going to go step by step. And with you or without you, I'm going to roll with this. The second part of the reasons that Putin invaded Ukraine, true or false? Western biological weapon facilities were in Ukraine. Is that true or false?
If you found them.
It's true.
If you found them.
They were found, and not only were they found, Victoria Nuland, in congressional testimony at the Senate in front of Marco Rubio, who asked her the question. Victoria Nuland is the Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs in the United States. And she admitted to Western biological weapons facilities in Ukraine because she was afraid that the Russians would find them and potentially use the material that they had accumulated in these biological weapons facilities.
Marco Rubio, really?
In congressional testimony, it's not Marco Rubio, who is a neocon in favor of this war, but rather Victoria Nuland, who is supervising the whole Ukraine situation for the State Department. She admitted it in congressional testimony.
Right. So what happened, as far as I'm aware, is that they found a hospital. They took some pictures of it.
They found 26 separate installations in Ukraine.
And was any weapons found there?
No, because they're secret.
Okay, they're secret, they're mysterious. So,
So
again,
what do you think
we
that they're
devolved
doing
into
there?
big government
Victoria
conspiracy.
Nuland was
Zelensky is
worried about that they
magic.
would fall
Zelensky
into
can
Russian
magically
hands.
move missiles from a biofacility. It's a biofacility, everyone. Trust me, it's not a hospital lab.
If Victoria Nuland was worried about the Russians getting their hands on the material there, then obviously it was weapons-grade material.
Right. How so?
The Kiev regime was unwilling to abide by the Minsk II peace agreements. Is this true or false?
I mean, do you also believe that they trained
the
bats
Kiev
and birds to
regime
spread
was
disease?
unwilling to abide by Minsk II
Because, I
peace
mean, that's
agreements.
also
True
in the
or
Russian
false?
claims.
The Kiev regime was unwilling to abide by the Minsk II peace agreements. True or false?
That one is actually true.
Yes,
We both know the Minsk agreements were not worth the fucking paper they're written on. Both sides frequently violated them all the time.
No, there weren't two sides.
We always knew they were going to be
the
bullshit.
Germans, the
never
French,
agreed to
the
it.
Ukrainians, and the Russians.
Yeah. It was the Germans, the
Was
French.
the Kiev
and
regime
both sides
about
felt
to
very
launch
betrayed
an
by it.
invasion of the Donbass? Yes or no? True or false?
False.
It's true, because that's why all of the Ukraine military was concentrated in the area adjacent to the Donbass region. That's why there's a current conflict in that particular region, because that's where the bulk of the frontline troops of the Ukrainian armed forces were stationed. They were preparing for an offensive in mid-March. It's been admitted to by the Pentagon and by other analysts who have looked at the data and satellite pictures previous to the conflict.
Which troops?
Ukrainian armed forces troops.
Ukrainian armed forces. So not their elites then, not their top elites.
Yes, actually, there were their top elites.
Which ones?
I don't know the specific unit numbers, and that's not the issue. I'm not paying attention to a particular tree. I'm looking at the forest. I'm looking at the forest. Just because I look at a forest and can't identify a particular tree.
You're looking at the forest and you're missing the trees. Can we move on? Because I want to see what else you've got here.
Sure. So you're unwilling to admit that any of these are true, except the second point, that the Kiev regime was unwilling to abide by Minsk II peace agreements.
Sure, I'll give you that one.
Okay. And you're saying that there were no biological weapons facilities in Ukraine. Is that true? Is that what you're saying?
There's no weapons. No weapons have been found.
They were there and they were found by the Russians.
Weapons may have been found. They found a hobby drone. They found a hobby drone with a basket on it and said, "Yes, aha, biological weapon." That's as much evidence as we've seen.
Victoria Nuland admitted to the fact of these biological weapons facilities in Ukraine in sworn congressional testimony.
Right.
So how does that square with you saying that there were no biological weapons at all?
How many slides do you have here?
I have 10.
You have 10. Move on, please.
We're on number 4. No, we're going to move on when you have answered the question.
All right, give me a second.
I'm disappointed in Destiny. I thought he was made of sterner stuff, but I guess, you know, the blue hair must have fried his brains, or maybe it fried his balls.
I don't think it's that at all. I think it's honestly because this isn't really a fair debate, is it? I mean, you're dictating our opinions,
and
you're not being fair here. You're dictating what our opinions are, and every time we refute it, you're not giving us a chance to speak, and you're just saying, "Aha, you're false. You're full of lies. You're full of
false.
You're evil."
I said specific issues, and you have denied them, even though there's available evidence. And laughing hysterically and rather nervously, I might add, isn't going to change.
That's not me laughing hysterically. Laughing is me going, it's just my normal fucking laugh because I'm a weird sideshow freak. Laughing hysterically, we'd be going, they never said I could teach a llama to drive. Well, they were wrong, the fools. That's laughing hysterically.
Uh-huh. So is the first statement true or false?
What kind of tree would you be?
It was
We're
funny,
gonna stare at each other all
I
night.
was
Yeah.
told by other people that whenever you threw a fact at Destiny, it completely discombobulates him. And that's why he quit.
Why are you going back to Destiny?
Because it's amusing to me. Just as
I mean,
you're going to be more amusing to me too.
I saw the podcast that you two were on back when you were Coach Red Pill. Are you still Coach Red Pill?
What's it say in my log line below?
Okay. Well, I saw the podcast where you two together. I will honestly admit, I have never seen two men in the throes of passion down each other's throats more than the last time I was at the Las Vegas
Trying
all-you-can-eat
to
twinkle
insinuate like homosexuality between myself and Destiny, it's kind of trivial, you know.
No,
so
but
it doesn't
it's
really get a rise out of me.
comparable to that.
Okay. Next,
I mean, it was
the conflict in Ukraine is in fact a proxy war between the United States and NATO against Russia. The goal of the United States and NATO is regime change in Russia and the physical breakup of the Russian Federation into several smaller countries. That is the destruction of the Russian nation. Are either of these statements true or false?
I have no idea.
You know.
I have absolutely no idea.
That's how you're going to play it? That you're a babe in the woods and know nothing?
Yeah.
So why are you commenting on the Ukrainian war?
You're framing the whole thing as ignorant or evil. So regardless of what, unless I agree with you at every point, in which case this would be a very boring discussion.
No, because I have some false ones too.
You've thrown in random false ones to trick me.
That's the kind of guy I am. What can I say?
Oh, you're a sneaky boy, aren't you?
I'm a sly one.
Sly boy. I used to be a voice actor. Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit at NATO.
You don't give a shit about NATO. Okay, fair
I don't
enough.
give a shit about NATO.
Well, both of these statements are actually true. And insofar as the United States and NATO wanting not only regime change, but the physical breakup of the Russian Federation, that's also true. There are multiple RAND studies where they're basically calling for this. And multiple people have stated outright that they want regime change, including Lindsey Graham, John McCain, all sorts of people. Well, McCain is no longer with us, but from hell, he's probably looking forward to this.
John McCain. Jesus Christ, my dude.
Joe Biden in Warsaw, I believe it was, he called for regime change as well, getting rid of Putin. So these are true statements.
I mean, so did Margaret Thatcher back in the day.
Margaret Thatcher was not the prime minister of the United Kingdom when Vladimir Putin was installed as president. So
no, but she met him. She met him and she said, if this man ever becomes the leader of this nation, may God have mercy on your soul, for I've met a man with no trace of humanity.
Okay. The United States and NATO, directly as well as through their Zelensky regime proxies, are winning this war against Russia. True or false?
Ooh. Is this one of the sneaky ones?
I'd be giving the game away if I said either way.
Because I happen to know that you disagree with this, don't you? You smoke a lot, Jesus.
Unfortunately, it's stress. I hadn't been smoking for 20 years. Not kidding, or not quite. I quit smoking when I was, 20 years. I quit smoking when I was 33. I picked up cigars, and you don't inhale. And so I sort of like weaned myself off cigarettes. But, because of this conflict, quite frankly, started smoking again. What can I say? I'm up to 2 packs a day.
So what kind of tree would you be?
I don't know. I don't know enough about trees to be able to give an intelligent opinion. So is this statement true or false?
Well, you happen to know that you happen to believe that it's false.
What do you believe?
Well, what I'll say is that Ukraine has managed to retake 70% of the land.
Is it true that you live in your mother's basement? That's what the chat is saying.
My mother doesn't have a basement.
Well, or in a room in your mother's house.
Let me check. Mother! No answer. Amazing. Could it potentially be that
maybe she's deaf? Turn on her hearing aid.
Mother, I require your assistance. Come here at once. I'm out of Cheetos. No answer. It's amazing. It could be that I'm in a house entirely by myself. My mother doesn't have a basement. She lives in a completely different country. But if she did have a basement, that'd be fucking great. I would move in there in a heartbeat because she lives in fucking Spain, and Spain is a gorgeous country. I pay less tax. I'd have access to better
So
food.
the United States is, in your estimation, winning this war against Russia. Is that your estimation?
Well, I mean, Ukraine has retaken 70% of the land that Russia took in its initial invasion. Russia has not really progressed beyond that. So a lot of people would see that as a victory for Ukraine. And a lot of people would see that, in fact, Russia is winning because they currently have managed to take about half of an old salt mining town just north of Bakhmut. I'm probably butchering the name of that city or town. And right now they own between just outside the winery down to the scrapyard. So I mean, it's entirely up to you.
Answer the
Ukraine
question.
takes their victories
Is the
in
U.S. and
territories
NATO
that in
winning
square
the war
miles
against Russia? Are they winning the war in Russia?
Ukraine calculates their victories in square miles. Russia calculates its victories in street names and house numbers.
No, Russia calculates its victories by way of the number of enemy killed or incapacitated, because this is a war of attrition. I'll get to that slide in just a minute, but I want you to answer this question first. Is the United States and NATO winning this war against Russia? Yes or no?
I have answered it. I think I have
Please,
answered it.
then say so, please, for the audience.
Because you want a yes or no answer. I can't see your chat.
You can see my chat. It's public.
No, I don't want to look at it.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a different story.
I don't want to look at a chat where everyone's calling me a man-child. Because that's the best argument they can come up with, because they've never had to insult someone since 5th grade. I'm a professional. I'm a Scotsman. You can't intimidate me with such weak-ass arguments. Come at me with something stronger.
Sure. Economically, the United States and NATO are losing the war against Russia because, number one, sanctions against Russia have backfired. Number two, the European economy is deindustrializing because of the sanctions against Russia, with high inflation and a GDP contraction that is projected to be as high as 10% in 2022. The Russian economy, in counterpoint, has suffered minimal damage with a moderate inflation and only 2.7% GDP contraction. By the way, the 2.7 GDP contraction of Russia, those are IMF figures released a couple of weeks ago. And the 10%, that's Goldman Sachs.
Right.
So, economically, are any of these statements true or false?
I'm being told by my own chat to calm down because apparently the sexual tension between us is getting through the roof.
Why do you keep bringing up the sex thing? Is that the only thing that you have, or is that a crutch that you use when you know that you're losing the argument?
No, it's something that my chat is doing. I thought I'd mention that. Just let's calm down and be adults. Let's turn my voice down.
So let's be adults, and let's be very soft and gentle as you answer these questions. Is any of these points points true or false?
I would say that these points cannot be justified as a true or false answer because they're not true or false answers.
Yes, they are true or false.
No, they're not.
Yes, they are.
Oh,
the 10% contraction of European economy, of the Eurozone economy, that's indisputably true. Inflation is high in the Eurozone. That is indisputably true. The lowest figure of the Eurozone is the Netherlands, or I believe is the Netherlands, which is something like 11.4. I know the Netherlands because I live there, and so I pay more attention to their economic data than other countries. And I believe Estonia has the highest Eurozone inflation with something like 30%. Right. I'm not 100% on Estonia, but I know that it's way up there, sort of like breaking away insofar as inflation is concerned.
Yeah, okay. But Estonia is not the European economy.
No, but the Netherlands is.
No, the Netherlands is not the European economy. The Netherlands is part of
it is the second largest food exporter on the planet. It is a major contributor to Eurozone GDP. Yes, it is. Yes. And the German industry has collapsed because of the loss of cheap energy from Russia. This is indisputably true. Nobody, insofar as the economic world is concerned, would dispute the fact that the German economy is contracting rapidly and at a catastrophic pace. This is known. This is true. Every economist, reputable economist, can say that this is true.
And there it is, every reputable economist. So basically, the economists who agree with your position are the ones who are speaking the truth.
There are a lot of
All the
economists
ones
that
who
I
have
don't agree
now
with. I
pointed out
don't
that
agree with
Germany's
the
economy is
IMF.
doing
I don't
fine,
agree with the World Bank. I
that
do
it now
agree with
is
Goldman Sachs.
completely
I do
not
agree with
dependent on Russian
Morgan
gas.
Stanley's analysis. So the reputable economists are those who are in the mainstream, those who are in fact pro-US and pro-NATO. Your side, they admit that this is the kind of contraction that the European economies are going to be suffering.
And it hasn't happened yet.
It has happened. There are.
I mean, according to these same economists, Germany should have collapsed 4 times by now over the past 8 years, and it's doing fine.
No, it's not. I know people in Germany.
I also know people in Germany.
I know people in the United Kingdom who tell me that there are no eggs and no poultry. There were no eggs and poultry for Christmas season. There were no geese. There were no chickens.
No, it depends what region you're in. I was fine. Yeah, there was a blockade on not a blockade. There was rationing on eggs, but you know why that is?
There was rationing on eggs.
Okay. Yeah, butter went up to like $7 a pack. Do you know why that is?
Mm-hmm. Tell me.
Brexit.
Oh, Brexit. Brexit happened. Yeah. When did it happen? 2016, if memory serves.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Yeah,
the Russian economy is suffering minimal damage and with moderate inflation and only 2.7% GDP contraction. True or false?
Russia is currently in more debt than it's ever been outside of the COVID.
It's 2% of its gross domestic product, which is inconsequential insofar as its foreign currency reserves and its current balance of trade.
5 trillion rubles in debt. That is trillion with a capital T.
The United States is, well, okay. Are the following statements true or false? Russia is experiencing moderate inflation and only 2.7% GDP contraction. True or false?
That is that is so false. It could actually be summarized as bullshit.
It's true. It's true. By the IMF has stated that this is true. These are IMF figures. International Monetary Fund, a Western organization, a U.S.-backed organization.
So
it's their figures.
When we spoke about Britain a little bit earlier, I mentioned that butter.
I'm not interested in Britain. I'm interested in the current situation in Ukraine and Russia. Please answer the question, or if you are unwilling to answer the question, I'll go to the next slide.
How expensive is food in Moscow right now?
That's not the issue.
How expensive is the price of a car?
So you don't want to answer the question. Okay.
Economies are rising all the time. The GDP is always rising.
Diplomatically, the United States and NATO are losing the war against Russia.
It's based on what people can actually afford. A country will have a GDP value that will go up and up and up and up and up until suddenly it doesn't, and the collapse happens. That's how economy works.
Of your points. So please.
Well, the thing is, you keep interrupting me and I keep moving on when I try to make a point. So,
well, no, because you don't want to admit to facts that are indisputable, and you're trying to filibuster this conversation by way of bringing in extraneous facts about Great Britain and other things that have nothing to do with the points that I am discussing.
Okay. So if I go on an explanation, suddenly it's irrelevant.
Excuse me a moment. I'm going to mute my camera just because I'm going to freshen up my coffee. But I'm still here and I'm listening. Okay. Please go ahead.
You know what? I'll be polite. I'll wait till he gets back with the coffee.
No, I'm here. I can hear you fine. I'm just carrying my computer over to get some coffee. It's no problem. Please continue. Okay. Oh, that's it? You don't have anything to say about the economic situation? Fine. Let's move on to diplomacy then. The United States and NATO are losing the war against Russia. The collective West has become isolated from the rest of the world, while Russia has improved its relations with every other country outside the West. Is this a true or false statement? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, I asked you a question.
Yeah, you did.
You don't want to answer it.
You won't let me answer these questions.
Please, I'm letting you answer these questions. Go ahead.
No, you're not. Every time I answer a question, you talk over me. You shout me down.
Well,
I
if
know
you're
you
going to
wonder.
talk about extraneous information, then I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in you telling me the truth or falsehood of statements that I am making.
These are not facts you're making. You have not sourced any of them. What you have done is you have written a PowerPoint presentation
I have
and you have
said
said,
where I
these are
got the information,
indisputable.
and people can look them up for themselves. I say the IMF studies that were released a couple of weeks ago, and I've given data, I've given the information that they can find for themselves very easily. I'm not going to put links in the middle of these slides, for what purpose? Because these are indisputable facts that everybody agrees on and everybody knows.
But I do that.
I beg your
At
pardon?
the end of every one of my videos, you can go into the description and you can see everywhere, every single source, everywhere I've pulled my facts from, everywhere I've pulled my stories from. I'll even put in reference material. I'll even put in references to books that I don't think you should buy, but they're there because I've referenced them. They're there because I've sourced them. Do you think I'd be a credible historian if I said it's true because I say it is?
We're not.
The T-34 is the worst tank ever made by
know,
human hands. I say so. There it is.
We're basically a couple of YouTubers shooting the shit, and I have specific questions that I'm posing to you. Now, if you're unwilling to answer them, okay.
Right.
You can quit whenever you want to. I'm not holding a gun to your head.
That's what you want, though, isn't it? You want me to quit. You want me to quit so then you can have the moral high ground and go, oh, look, he ran away. He can't answer questions. How pathetic, how sad.
But you're not answering the questions. So to everybody who's going to listen to this broadcast, they're going to say the same thing. The guy didn't answer the questions. I'm putting straightforward, very clear.
Why am I not answering the questions?
Because you know the answers.
Because it's a
and
black and white
fallacy. You don't want to face those answers.
It's a true or false, and if I say false, you go, but, and then you start going, and if I try to talk over you, suddenly everything I have to say is irrelevant.
When you start talking about the British economy and not the EU, because you yourself said of Brexit that it's no longer part of the European Union, so therefore I'm talking about the Eurozone, and you start talking about Britain, I know.
And what was the point I was trying to make?
You probably didn't have any point, and you were trying to improvise until you lit on some issue that might get a rise out of me.
No. The point I was trying to, let's go back to that and let's talk briefly for a little moment. The point I was trying to make is you did get a rise out of me telling you about the eggs and telling you about the bottom, the price of that. And I saw your little eyes light up. And then I was going to bring that back to the point of how expensive
light up behind my glasses,
is food
I'm looking at myself
Moscow.
And there's like all
You're
kinds
interrupting
of...
me again.
Oh, okay, sorry.
How expensive is food in Moscow?
Is there food in Moscow?
Is there food in Moscow? Wow.
Because there isn't in Great Britain. Yeah, because there is in Russia, but there isn't in the UK.
There's no food in the UK. Christ, how am I so fat then if there's no food anywhere?
I don't know. You're going to have to go on a forced diet. Break out the leather shoes and start, boiling them or something. Oh, wait, you're not going to have the energy to boil them. My mistake.
So Britain doesn't have food?
No, of course it does have food. I was being facetious, and you and I both know it.
It's kind of getting hard to tell, if I'm completely honest with you.
If that makes you feel better, go ahead. Believe that if you will.
All right, I'll choose to believe it. I'll choose to believe it. Now, answer my question. How expensive is food in Moscow?
I'm not denying that there's been inflation in Russia.
Now food's avoiding the question. Now food won't answer the questions. How expensive is food in Moscow?
I don't know because I'm not in Moscow.
You don't know?
No, I go with the statistics of the overall economy. I do not know specifically the price of food in Russia. No, I don't.
But you know how... You know all about the German
This is,
economy.
again, you trying to focus on a specific tree so as to avoid the forest.
Right.
It's a rhetorical strategy, and it's very old. Schopenhauer wrote about it. Yeah.
How about I answer the question for you?
40, 50 years ago.
How about I answer the question for you?
Sure.
It's doubled in price.
Mm-hmm.
Cars have, what was it, tripled in price? Some are up by, 5 times, 10 times actually. My apologies. And they're running out of buckwheat. They're running out of salt, and apparently they're running out of sugar as well.
Really?
Yeah,
Because I see all these videos.
Their economy is
I see
fine.
all these pro-Western videos of Russians and Americans and Brits living in Russia, and they show supermarkets, and they seem pretty well stocked to me. Certainly better than here in Kharkov. Certainly better than UK or the Netherlands.
Yeah, I'm sure if you look at a picture of a supermarket, you can see, yes, there's plenty of pasta sauce. But pasta sauce was not one of the things I listed. I said buckwheat and sugar and salt.
Okay.
Do you have pictures
So
where they have
moving on to the diplomatic front.
Okay. So
the
now
collective West
I've
has
given you
become
an answer to a
isolated
question
from
that you don't
the
like. Now
collective
we're moving on.
West. No, because you're just pulling bullshit out of your ass, and you and I both know it. It's a waste of time to argue with such a thing. See,
I make a point, it's bullshit.
Well, it is bullshit because we're talking about. I asked you a specific question: whether in Russia
does that make me ignorant or evil?
That makes you evil.
Right.
Look, you're an evil guy. I saw your video, your previous videos. Okay.
Which ones?
You know, I can be civil with a pig, but I know what I'm dealing with. Okay.
You have absolutely no idea what you're dealing with here.
Yeah, I know. That's why I didn't give you my email address, because I knew that you were going to spread it around and have it be spammed. And that's why I'm very careful about how I handle you, because you're the kind of guy who would be happy to give away my precise location so that some goon harms me here in Kharkov. Because that's the kind of guy you are, and I want to show that. That's why you're on. The whole point of this exercise is to show people who you really are.
I have absolutely
dishonest,
no interest.
lying, and willing to harm other people for his ego and for his feeling of belonging to the Western regimes that are committing a genocide here in Ukraine. This war would have been over long ago had it not been for your prime minister, your propaganda that scuttled the deal in April that would have been a ceasefire. That's why the Russians withdrew, because of the negotiations that were going on in Istanbul. And then Boris Johnson flew into Zelensky and then told him in no uncertain terms that he could not sign any kind of peace agreement. So everything that has happened since early April until today, all the senseless deaths of all the young men in Ukraine, it's because of people like you who knew the facts and just said, yeah, march on, keep on fighting. Yeah, Ukraine, I stand with Ukraine. And have all the Ukrainian young men, the flower of this country, be killed in a senseless war. You know, you always knew. And you're just an evil fuck who is happy to see the destruction of the Ukrainian nation and the Ukrainian people.
Crocodile tears you shed for Ukraine. And how tragic it is that the Zelensky regime is marching soldiers to their death, but not a thought spared for all the Russians who have died. And for what? I have personally spoken to people who have fled Mariupol, both prior and while under Russian rule. I've also had the opportunity to speak to some of the families of Syrian volunteers who were promised home. Bring your families, bring your children to Putin's new Russia if you come and fight for him. And they talk of the debris. They talk of the lack of services. They talk of the lack of facilities and the fact that they cannot go outside at night because the streets are owned by wild animals, by dogs, by wolves who dig through the rubble to feast.
What are you talking about? You're just randomly spewing out words because you know that everything I previously said is true.
By the Russian army.
You knew about the destruction of Ukraine
wild
beforehand.
Dogs running
and
around the
what
street.
you encourage with your propaganda and your lies
that is life under
the destruction of the Ukrainian nation.
I want to hear it from your mouth.
You want the destruction of the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian nation because you are fundamentally a nihilist.
Why you think this is acceptable for Russia?
Do you want a shit show? Am I delivering? Chat, hit me with a +1 if I am delivering a shit show for you.
Hi, chat.
You guys wanted to see a shit show? Here we are. I'll wait for chat to catch up. Hit me with a +1 if you're enjoying the shit show.
I love how it's only your subscribers that allowed into this chat.
Yeah, because I knew that you'd brigade it, and Destiny would too. That's why neither one of you mentioned a peep to your followers that you were going to be on.
I've mentioned 4 times that I'll be on. There's been 2 announcements in my Discord. There's been 2 announcements.
I'm not on Discord, so
on my YouTube. Well, that's not exactly, it's not exactly me saying, "Oh, I'm going to keep this a secret," am I? No, I even posted it on Twitter.
So let's get back on topic.
Can you answer my question, please?
Yes, the question is as follows. True or false? The collective West has become isolated from the rest of the world while Russia has improved its relations with every other country outside the West. True or false?
I find it very interesting. You have to jump to the chat when you suddenly start to feel insecure. Can you answer my previous question, please?
Can you rephrase it? Because you said so much bullshit that I could not tell what was a question and what was just more gassy, filibustering nonsense.
Where did you hear up to?
I beg your pardon?
Where did you hear up to? I was talking about
I'm not really paying attention to you. I'm just trying to keep on point as to...
You're not paying attention to me.
No, because nothing you're saying is of any interest whatsoever so far. I'm waiting for you to entertain me, okay? This is more tedious for me than for you, because in my usual broadcasts, I have entertaining guests, interesting guests who have a lot to say, who are very insightful. You're not one of them.
You have guests who agree with you on every point, and then you don't need to say anything. You just move them from topic to topic, and then they discuss why everything that you've said is correct.
No, lots of times I've had a lot of disagreements with my guests on a lot of different issues, and it's been extremely stimulating. I have had hardcore leftists, and everybody knows that I'm a conservative, and it's been really interesting to talk to them.
Okay, but not to me.
No, because you're not saying anything that is particularly interesting so far. You're just gassy bullshit.
Do you constrain your other guests into truth or dare questions? Are you ignorant or evil? Answer honestly. And if you say the wrong answer, then you should be punished.
I've never done this before. But I knew what I was dealing with, you know? Because I always remember George Bernard Shaw's quip, you know? Never get down in the mud to wrestle with the pig, because you'll only get dirty and the pig will enjoy it. And well, it's in your name. So I decided to be prepared, and I put myself, you know, in a nice little plastic-proof, mud-proof suit to make sure that we stay on point.
To protect yourself.
Yes, because I don't want to get soiled by you.
A metaphorical pig. I need to ask, do you genuinely think
that you're an actual pig? But that's...
Do you think I'm an actual pig?
Yeah.
Right. If my avatar was, if I was Laser Llama, would that make you feel more secure?
No, I'd still consider you a pig.
Right.
Giggling is not going to help you.
But I'm finding this funny. I'm sorry. I mean, as much as I'm not, and I apologize that I'm not being entertaining enough to you, you're being sufficiently entertaining to me.
By the way, Chad is asking, you're gay, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
the collective West has become isolated from the rest of the world, while Russia has improved its relations with every other country outside the West. True or false?
So basically, you're scared of open debate.
No, I'm not scared of open debate.
You're scared of debating me. Okay. You are actually scared of me. You're scared of what I might say. That's why you shut down everything that I say. That's why you constrain me into these bullet points and then demand I say
I'm not interested in listening to bilious
so you can decide
bullshit.
If I make them or evil.
I want to hear something actually logical and reasonable, but you haven't given me any of that. It's just bilious bullshit.
Right. Okay. It's bilious bullshit because you've decided that it's bilious bullshit.
It is objectively bilious bullshit. When you start going on about like dogs running in the streets and whatnot, it's just bullshit that you're just using to obfuscate the fact that you do not want to answer any of these very, very simple and straightforward questions.
Because they're not simple and straightforward.
Yes, they are.
These are very complicated issues that you're presenting in an incredibly simple manner. This is the kind of stuff that I make videos from. This is the kind of things that I have made my career as a historian from. People
You're not a historian.
You're
just a YouTuber, for crying out loud. Come on, don't give yourself delusions of grandeur, for crying out loud. At least I'm honest enough to know that I'm just a middle-aged fart with a YouTube channel.
I do forget myself. I must apologize. I'm not no one. I'm just a YouTuber. That's the only label I'm allowed to have.
Well, in this format, yeah. What am I supposed to say? Am I supposed to bring up the
So
fact
what does
that
that
I'm
make
a
you?
published? I'm just a loser YouTuber, a middle-aged fart with a YouTube channel. That's all I am.
Right.
Are there things outside of my life of YouTube? Certainly. But what's the point? Here,
well, there's things outside of
it's
my
just
YouTube as well.
tete-a-tete, as it were, you know? Just
Right.
you and me, baby. So answer the question.
Why?
Well, you wanted to be on. You said that you wanted to be on. Okay, you're on. Answer the question.
And I came here for morbid curiosity, and I have
Oh,
found
morbid curiosity.
morbid
I
curiosity.
don't think so.
I've
You
found
were
this
so
highly
concerned
entertaining.
as to whether I was
I
going to
have my
other
own
guests
separate
on.
chat, guys. How are you? How are you finding everything?
Of course, they're going to suck up to you.
Of course they are. They're my subscribers, but they also hate me.
You enjoy that, being hated?
Do I enjoy the hate?
Yeah, nihilists often do. They
Do I enjoy when
caitiff men who've never accomplished much in their lives kind of like revel masochistically in the sense that people despise them and look down on them. I assume that you're one of those individuals.
I am not. I've gone through very serious hardship in my life, and quite serious
Well,
pain.
we all have.
We all
That doesn't
have.
make
Yes.
you. It doesn't make you like owner of suffering.
I didn't enjoy it.
And by the way, I'm just
I did
muting
not
my camera,
enjoy
but I
it.
can still hear you. Okay, I'm sorry. You were saying?
I've gone through a lot of pain in my life, and I did not enjoy it. And how dare you imply otherwise?
When I was picked up by the SBU, you know, and I was interrogated a few times, yeah, I can say that I agree that yeah, it wasn't pleasant.
It's not pleasant, is it? You're arrested for a week on. They thought you might be a collaborator or a spy or something.
I'm not going to discuss, and I am not at liberty to discuss the particulars of my interrogations by the SBU while I was in their custody.
They seem very happy to talk to everybody else about it.
No, I haven't. I haven't discussed any of the details. I haven't discussed with anyone.
I mean, the SBU have mentioned it in passing several times.
Oh, well.
Ugh, excuse me. So what was your question?
So my question is that the collective West has become isolated from the rest of the world, while Russia has improved relations with every other country outside the West. True or false?
True.
Okay, let me just mute this. The rest of this is accurate. This is true. Russia has improved its relations with Turkey, with Saudi Arabia, certainly with China, and certainly with India, which is the most surprising of them all. Even the Indians are very surprised. They've increased their oil imports from Russia by magnitudes. They're up to, I do believe, about 1,100,000 barrels of oil a day from Russia. And so Russia hasn't essentially lost a customer since the start of the sanctions. So yes, the rest of the world no longer trusts the West because of the admissions that the Minsk II agreements were to buy time to arm Ukraine, excuse me. True or false?
Sure, that's true as well.
That's true.
It's all true. It's all true. Next slide, please.
No, let's go through it. Angela Merkel and Francois Hollande, in 3 separate interviews, admitted to the fact. Interviews that were conducted over the last couple of months.
See, I'm playing devil's advocate here, and I'm deliberately agreeing with you, and yet you're still arguing with me.
No, I'm just filling out the points so that the audience knows what I'm talking about specifically.
Right. Okay.
See, that's the thing. You're proving the fact that you are not ignorant. You know these facts.
Oh, so
and
I must
so
be
that
evil.
you're, yeah.
I must be evil. Excuse me. Would you give me 2 seconds, please?
Well, chat, we're all alone for now. I don't know what LazerPig is doing. Chat, if you have been entertained, please give me a +1. If you think that LazerPig is winning and that I'm being an evil bastard, hit LP. And if you think that I've been as fair as possible, just put G. I'll wait for chat to catch up.
Everybody in my chat say hey. Oh my God, they're actually saying it. Okay, thank you. Thank you guys. Love you. They all hate me. It's horrific.
You enjoy it.
No, I really don't.
Yes, you do.
I wish they would kiss my asshole more, but sadly they don't, because that would be horrible. Now, just for the record, I've put on a top hat and a cape. I have this false mustache I'm just attaching to myself. I am now evil.
Oh, chat, are you guys hearing the air raid siren again?
Is this going to be a problem? Are you going to need to head off?
No. They go off periodically. It's usually missile strikes or strikes of various sorts. Sometimes there are no strikes at all, and sometimes, annoyingly, there is a strike, and then after the end of the strike, then the fucking sirens go on. You know, it scares the poor babushkas to high heaven. That's the thing that bothers me, you know, because whenever the air raid sirens go off in my apartment, all the, you know, elderly ladies, quite frankly, they rush to the basement, terrified, poor things. But, well, because you see, of that missile strike that did hit the building next to my own back in early September, yeah, I suppose it's justified. But, I mean, they should really put the kibosh on the air raid sirens, because, you know, if you're hit by a missile, you know, I mean, no warning is going to save you, okay? And so the air raid sirens, I think, are a complete waste of time. And like I said, they scare the elderly people and certainly the kids, and so that's why I'm very against them.
I would disagree. The air raid sirens are a waste of time, because, yeah, they might go off 5 times, and there might only ever be once that the missile actually hits. But that once the missile actually hits, you might be inside, you might be safe, you might be sheltered.
Perhaps I'm a fatalist. Okay, next slide. Military. Oh, this is the part that you're going to enjoy. Ooh. Militarily, the U.S. and NATO are losing the war against Russia, and I'm going to outline the argument first, and then we can discuss it, so that, you know, I mean, because it's a step-by-step argument. The conflict has devolved into attritional war. In an attritional war, conquered territory does not matter. All that matters is annihilating the opposing army's forces. The US and NATO does not have the industrial capacity to replenish Zelensky regime losses on the battlefield. Since the Russians have more men and materiel, they will inevitably win. Therefore, prolonging the war will do nothing except destroy the Ukraine nation and people. I hope that you can see it clearly on your screen.
I can see it.
Good.
Again, with this, I would ask the question, why does Russia hold a monopoly on morality?
That's not the issue. We're talking about the military. And you're the guy who loves talking about the military stuff. You claim that you know all these weapon systems and so forth and so on. And so just looking at an overall strategy as to the conduct of the war should be a cinch for you. Is this conflict, has it devolved into attritional war? I would say that that's true. In an attritional war, conquered territory does not matter. All that matters is annihilating the opposing army's forces. Is that true or false?
Holy shit.
Holy shit, what?
You actually said it. Someone said it. I'm sorry, this is a first for me. I've never ever seen anyone on the pro-Russian side state that conquered territory does not matter. Because in the start of this war, that was the only thing that mattered.
No, at the start of this war,
that was the only thing that mattered. I could go back and I could read your tweets, and I've seen them. I've seen what you said.
Well, my opinion has changed.
Okay.
And insofar as the looking at it overall and understanding the initial Russian strategy, it's clear that what the Russians were trying to do was just scare the Zelensky regime into a quick settlement and implementation of Minsk II. When they withdrew in late March, early April, that's when they decided to change strategies. And certainly by September, they had decisively changed their strategy to an attritional campaign.
I would agree and disagree with the first part of that sentence.
Okay.
I mean, yes, it is very obvious that they were trying to scare Zelensky into signing over agreements. But when Russia was having teams driving around in civilian cars and ambulances trying to find Zelensky, And when they
I was in Kiev. I was in Kiev. That's not accurate. I was in Kiev at the start of the war. That's just not accurate.
Okay. So all the pictures and everything that we have of that,
I
those
was
were all
3
falsified.
blocks away. I was literally 3 blocks away from the presidential palace in Kiev. I can say unequivocally that that's just bullshit.
He wasn't at the presidential palace, though.
I don't need to have been there to have known. I had a lot of people in contact with a lot of people, a lot of press people. And that was just an outright fabrication.
Okay. So it's
so they
pictures,
don't fabricate
all the
stuff like the ghost of Kiev. Oh, how many planes did he shoot down last week? Like 30.
Ghost of Kiev, dude. They admitted he was a fabrication like last year, like in March. That was not a product of the Zelensky government. That was a product of non-credible defense, a subreddit. They made him up, and then the propaganda department, which there is one, obviously, of Ukraine, ran with it, and then finally admitted, "No, it's not true."
Okay, so anyway, to get back to this point, which is much more serious than Ghost of Kiev bullshit, whoever was the source of it, or whoever inflamed it, or put a megaphone to it, irrespective of that, we can agree that this is an attritional war. An attritional war, what matters is annihilating the opposing army's forces. We can agree that U.S. and NATO does not have the industrial capacity to replenish Zelensky regime losses on the battlefield.
I would agree that if it hasn't devolved into an attritional war, it is going to, because all wars eventually turn into attritional wars.
Attritional war. I mean, that's the whole point of Bakhmut, right?
I would say that in all wars, conquered territory does not matter, and America should have learned this in Vietnam, and it did not.
Well, they should have learned it from the Civil War. The American Civil War was an attritional war, and in fact, the Confederacy won the last couple of battles before Appomattox. Appomattox. I can never pronounce that goddamn word.
My dude, please. People want me to cover the American Civil War all the time. They always want me to make videos of it. It is 2 massive armies chasing each other around a country, and it is most boring civil war there is on the planet. Please, no.
Well, actually, I think it's fascinating because it was the first instance of large-scale industrial warfare, and the brutality and bloodiness of it. I mean, look at Gettysburg.
Yeah, you could take that angle, I suppose. I just don't. I just don't want to. I don't want to cover it. It's been covered too many times.
Well, no, that's not the point of this conversation. Who gives a shit about the American Civil War? We're talking about the war here in Ukraine. So
I would argue that all that matters is annihilating an opposing army's forces is not really true. I mean, it was a huge part of not so much annihilating, but it was a huge part of the Second World War, of the tactic commonly misclaimed as blitzkrieg, used by the Germans, especially very effectively in France, which was not to annihilate the opposing army's forces, but to surround and cut them off.
Yeah, the maneuver warfare.
Like prevent them from being able to move, prevent them from being able to fight, prevent them from being effective, cut off their supply lines. That
maneuver warfare.
Maneuver warfare. Yes, well done. Gold star. Apparently, New Atlas is here.
I feel so much better. What? I beg your pardon?
New Atlas is here. I took the gold star off him, so I'm going to give it to you. Well done. What else was your point? I'm sorry.
That the U.S. and NATO does not have the industrial capacity to replenish the Zelensky regime losses on the battlefield.
I would disagree.
The United States has just admitted that they can only produce 15,000 artillery shells per month, and the current rate of the Zelensky regime forces, not the Russians. The Russians are shelling at 20,000 per day, whereas the Zelensky regime can only manage about 7,000 artillery rounds per day. 7,000 artillery rounds is what? 210,000 a month. And the current rate of attrition, the current rate of U.S. production of artillery is 15,000 rounds per month. Shit. Chat, help me out here. What's 210 divided by 15? Like 15 as well? So basically, the Zelensky regime is using up equipment at 15 times the rate of production.
Yes.
Of the American production, and the Americans are the only ones who are producing artillery shells in large numbers.
No, they're not.
Oh, really?
Europe actually produces more artillery shells than America, and the Pacific nations even more.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah. Okay,
South
fair enough.
Korea
But
is
insofar
giving
as
rounds to Ukraine, and they have about 4
North
million
Korea,
rounds like
North
stockpiled.
Korea.
South Korea. Sorry, did I say North?
Yes, you did.
My apologies. That's the wine
No.
talking. South Korea.
Mm-hmm.
They have about 4 million rounds stockpiled. Now, they probably won't give all 4 million to Ukraine, but on the Russian side, they've gone from using 60,000 rounds a month to 5,000 rounds. They've almost completely run out of. I think they have run out of 122 millimeter shells, which is why
Then
they are
why
converting.
are they like? Why are they, blitzing? Well, that's a wrong word, but you know what I mean. The Bakhmut
Why are they still using artillery? Well, they've got 155 millimeter artillery, and they're converting more 122s to 155, so they have
so
access
basically,
to
you
those
don't
rounds.
want to touch the issue of whether NATO has the industrial capacity or not. Alex Vashinin said that the United States simply does not. The United States and NATO, United States and its allies, both in Europe and the Far East, they do not have the industrial capacity and they do not have the shells. That's what Alex Vashinin said.
Well, I would disagree with Alex Machinin.
Okay. Do you know who Alex Vashinin is?
I know exactly who he is, and that's why I'm disagreeing with him.
Okay.
The US has 3,500 Abrams in storage. They've got 4,000 Bradleys in storage.
Oh, come on. Bradleys are basically
There's a company in Czechoslovakia.
a lightly armored Jeep, and you and I both know it. It's better to have a Hummer. At least it's quicker than a Bradley. Come on.
You're trying to distract me with Bradley talk here. So you have watched my videos.
Oh, okay.
I'm not falling for that one. But yes, there's a Czechoslovakia company that produces 100,000 artillery shells every month alone.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really see them running out of artillery shells. I don't really see an alliance of nations using 1.4% of its budget.
Okay. Since the Russians have more men and material, and they indisputably do, Zaluzny, the commander in chief
I do apologize. 100,000 artillery shells a year, 2.9 a month.
Okay. Since the Russians have more men and material, they will inevitably win. And this is indisputably true that the Russians currently, actually as of a month ago, they had 540,000 troops stationed in Belarus, the eastern border with Ukraine, and the southern border, the southern conquered territory, captured territory, whatever you want to call it. The Russians, so a month ago, they had 540,000, and they're still shipping in more men and gear. We can round it up to say 600,000 so far. And that's, I think, a conservative number. Whereas Zaluzny himself, the commander-in-chief of the Zelensky regime forces, admitted that they only have 200,000 troops available.
Yes, they did say that because they want because they're putting pressure on America to put boots on the ground because they want more troops.
Because they don't have them.
Well, they have them, but they don't.
They don't have them. If they're trying to get troops from NATO, that means that they don't have them. Why would they want NATO boots on the ground if they have all the troops necessary?
What I'm trying to say is they're potentially exaggerating because, I mean, you need to understand the Zelensky. Oh my God, this wine! My God, the Zelensky regime, as you like to call them, claimed that it would run out of troops within about 3 months, and we're now about a year. We're just under a year into the conflict. And what's Russia doing? Well, Russia's pulling all crap out of storage, which it really shouldn't need to do. It's having to raise new divisions, which it really shouldn't need to do. It's having to do mass conscription, which again, it really shouldn't need to do. It's pulling T-62s out of storage.
You know that that's not true. They were basically reservists, the equivalent of the U.S. National Guard, the people who were called up in the mobilizations in September and into the fall. Those people were all with prior military experience.
My ex-boyfriend would disagree with
you. You and I both know it.
Okay. Yes, we do know that because that is true. It's all people with this prior military experience.
Oh, so you say that there is such a thing as truth and falsehood.
Let me finish. Let me finish. That is true. All people with ex-military experience. Remind me, military service in Russia is mandatory, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes. So, like everyone within the recruitment age, everyone within Russia, potentially over the age of 21, is eligible for recruitment because they're all ex-military.
like in
Every single one
Israel.
of them is ex-military.
Everybody has to do their service in Russia, as I understand it. I could be
Right.
wrong.
So what's
Am I
the
wrong?
difference between mass conscription and calling up reservists in that
Well,
instance? When every single
because when
male
you
is
claim that
technically a reservist.
because you're giving a false impression that the people who have been called up are untrained, who have no idea what they're doing. They don't have the even an inkling of what is the business end of a rifle, and you know that that's not true. So you're calling them conscripts to give the impression that they are untrained men who are just going to be thrown into like a horde or human waves, which is the constant talking point of NATO supporters,
No,
such
did I
as
say
yourself.
that?
No, but you're trying to give the impression of it.
I have maintained the position. I've always maintained the position that Russia does not use human wave tactics and never has.
At least you're one of the few honest in that regard. I mean, you're dishonest about a whole bunch of other shit that I think that we've shown pretty conclusively so far. But at least on that, I'll give you that you're not so totally despicably dishonest as your compatriots, confreres, comrades on the NATO side.
I will also say that human wave tactics don't work.
They
I
certainly
will
don't.
also say that that is not out with the realm of possibility that Russia will do that.
But it is what the Zelensky regime is currently doing.
The Zelensky regime is not doing that at all.
They are throwing lives away in Bakhmut in literal human waves. There has been so many videos of that, of different units of the Zelensky regime forces being thrown without gear, without leadership, without any kind of equipment necessary to even mount a moderate defense.
And who made those videos?
Ukrainian soldiers.
No, they did not.
Yes, they did. They're all over the Telegram.
Which telegrams?
Slaviangrad.
The problem I have with Telegram is it's mostly what is used in Ukraine and Russia. They use Telegram. They don't use Skype or Instagram or Facebook or anything else. They use Telegram. But the problem is, as has been revealed multiple times, there are telegrams that are pro-Ukrainian, there are telegrams that are pro-Russian, there are telegrams that are pretending to be pro-Ukrainian and are pro-Russian. And one of the big things, one of the big problems I have in one of the big problems I have in Bakhmut, and I saw this quite recently, it is a major target of the Wagner Group, which is that wonderful private military company, as they like to call themselves, has spent 5 months fighting there and has managed to slightly secure an old salt mine.
They're annihilating boatloads of Zelensky regime forces in these piddly little salt mines. And the Zelensky regime is making its last stand in Bakhmut practically. And they know that if Bakhmut falls, all they have left is the Kramatorsk line, which is nowhere near as well defended and fortified as the Bakhmut line was. And beyond that, it's clear sailing for the Russian armed forces all the way to the city of Dnipropetrovsk, or Dnipro, as you will to call it.
So for 5 months.
So hang on a second. I just want to point out the following. Number one, we agree that it's a war of attrition. Number two, we agree that in an attritional war, what matters is annihilating the opposing army. Number three, we agree that Russia has indisputably more men and materiel, irrespective of how they got them. They have more. They have at least 2.5 times the number of the Zelensky regime. Therefore, prolonging this war will do nothing except destroy the Ukraine nation and the Ukraine people. Because in an attritional war, even if your casualties are 1-to-1, the numbers ultimately win, right? So prolonging this conflict only serves to destroy the Ukraine nation and people, which is what you want. I mean, we've established that.
I'm pro-Ukrainian, so no.
No, you're not, because if you were pro-Ukrainian, you'd be begging for a ceasefire and a negotiated settlement, a la Minsk II, but that ship has sailed. You're all in favor of continuing this war because you're a NATO supporter.
You're pushing this to Russia having
you
a monopoly
know the truth.
On morality.
You know the truth,
right?
And so
again, these are crocodile tears that you're shedding for Ukraine.
I live here, you imbecile. I've been living here since off and on. I've been coming here since 2012, living here with an address here and everything since 2016. So tell me about crocodile tears. Fuck off. I live here. These people, I see them all the time. They're friends, they're neighbors, they're people I know.
And do you not think
I
it's
see their
up to
suffering.
them?
I see their
Do you
suffering,
not
and I
think it's
know
up
that
to
it's because
them?
of NATO supporters like yourself who are encouraging this pointless war that cannot be won by the Zelensky regime and is throwing away the flower of Ukraine youth and destroying the Ukraine nation. It's because of people like you, NATO supporters like you, who know the truth. You know that this is only going to end with the annihilation of the Ukraine nation, and you are egging them on pointlessly, needlessly, knowing the truth. And that makes you evil. Period.
Because I'm an evil warmonger. Therefore,
yes,
war gives me a hard on.
Yes, because you're a small failure of a man who never accomplished anything in his life except his little giggling. And so you get a hard on by being on the side of the bullies, by being on the side of the despicable bullying tactics of NATO and that whole cabal, and you love it. That's the fact about you. You're a nihilist, and you're always going to be on the side of the bully, because ultimately your soul is black. And it's a real pleasure to be able to tell you this to your face. Of course, you don't have the balls to show your face. You don't have the balls, except anything, to sit in a small little room in the United Kingdom, far away from the conflict, whereas I am here in a place that I actually care about, and I'm seeing this pointless destruction.
You care about Ukraine.
For the ego of people like you.
You care about Ukraine.
Yes.
So, do you want to join me in singing the Ukrainian national anthem then?
Chat, I'm going to leave it as a democratic vote. Chat, are we done here, or should I continue with this fool? Hit me with done, D for done, or C for continue.
I have two questions.
Go ahead.
Do you want to join me in singing the Ukrainian? If you love Ukraine so much, do you want to join me in singing the national anthem?
I wouldn't be able to pronounce it properly, and I have a horrible singing voice.
So do I.
Continue. Oh, okay, fine. Okay, so let's go on. So you are in favor of prolonging the war?
You do not know the words to the Ukrainian national anthem.
No, because I don't speak Ukrainian.
You don't speak Ukrainian. You don't immerse yourself in the culture of Ukraine.
No, because I'm stupid with languages. What do you want me to say? Okay, I'm terrible with languages. Shit, I lived for a year and a half in France, and I couldn't learn fucking French, even though I had fucking daily lessons at it. I'm sorry. It's just not how my brain is wired. Now, socially, let's go on the issue of the United States and NATO are losing the war against Russia on the social level. Let's talk about specific issues that I think actually you and I might agree on a lot of these points, but people in the West are suffering and protesting. Is that true or false?
Of course that's true.
That's
people in the West are always suffering and always protesting about whatever.
Okay, all the governments in the West have the support of less than half their populations. True or false?
That I don't know.
Actually, it's true.
Okay.
I mean, come on. Do you think that a majority of people are in favor of Rishi Sunak?
Well, that's hard to argue against, but you know, I do like this notion of popular support, and I love the fact that you've come out and said, even though you don't speak the language, you don't involve yourself in the culture, you don't even know the national anthem. Can you sing it? Can you sing it in English?
No.
You can't even sing it in English.
No.
Okay.
Just because I don't know that, just because I can't sing a song doesn't mean. I mean, like,
it's not a song; it's the national anthem.
Look, I would be hard pressed to sing the national anthem of Chile, and I am fucking Chilean, and I had to sing that fucking song every goddamn week in school, and I would be hard pressed. I'm being dead serious. How does that fucking thing go? I honestly forgot, and my head is not in that space at all. So to sing the Chilean national anthem or the anthem of any other country doesn't mean squat. It doesn't mean that you care about it. I'm here, okay? The fact that I'm here means that I care about it. I have the opportunity and the passports to live wherever the fuck I want. So if I'm here,
well, I mean, that's not true, because in your own words, you're not allowed to leave Kherson.
Well, quite frankly, if I really, really wanted to leave, I could leave. But I've decided for my own reasons that I want to stay here until the end of the conflict.
Okay. Since you love Ukraine so much, what does Ukraine think about surrendering to Putin?
I am not at liberty to answer that question.
Of course you're not, because they've been polled twice. They have been polled twice on the idea, should we surrender to Putin under the terms that he has dictated?
He hasn't dictated any terms.
He has dictated terms.
No, he hasn't. The Zelensky regime has dictated terms for negotiations.
They have. Do you know what they were?
Yeah, they were like, Russia has to get out of all of Ukraine, including Crimea, and only then will the Zelensky regime start negotiating with Russia, which is no point at all. It's basically a total bullshit in order to give the appearance that they are willing to negotiate, when in actuality they have no intention of negotiation. They want to destroy the Ukraine nation and the Ukraine people for the ego of people like yourself and the warmongers of the United States and NATO.
I'm pretty confident
Look,
Zelensky doesn't give a shit
I'd
about me.
respect you more if you were just saying, yeah, I'm an evil warmonger and I don't give a shit about Ukraine and the Ukraine people. I'd respect you more. The fact
Sorry,
that this
Kharkov, not
bullshit,
Kherson.
you know, this kind of bullshit that you got going, it's just really despicable. It's sort of like the abortion issue. See, if you want to kill a baby because it's inconvenient, just say so. You know, none of this bullshit that, oh, it's not real life, it's this or that. Fuck that. Be a man. You know, stand up and say, fuck, I don't give a fuck. If it requires some death for my convenience, fine. Just say that. I respect you more. But this wishy-washy bullshit.
You'd
fuck
respect me
off.
more for agreeing with you
Well,
that some death is worth it.
I beg your pardon?
You agree that some death is worth it then?
No, I don't agree with that at all.
You look at Russia.
No, you're lying about what I said.
You look at the war crimes that they have
I think
committed.
that it's despicable.
You look at the mass extermination.
The mass extermination. There hasn't been any
munitions.
mass extermination. That's a lie. There has been indiscriminate shelling of Ukrainian people by the Zelensky regime. That's an undisputed fact. They have dropped pedal mines all over Donetsk, where children can be killed and people maimed permanently because of these pedal mines that serve no useful military application other than to terrorize civilians. No, you know, what you're saying there is just a bunch of bullshit, and you and I both know it. That's the fact. And I'm going to be ending this conversation because we've gone on for an hour and 45 minutes. And further conversation with you, I think we pretty much agree is a waste of both of our time. But I'm just going to say, I mean, I think I've made it very clear, but just to reiterate, I think that you're a piece of shit. I think you're a warmongering bastard who enjoys the suffering of the Ukraine nation and the Ukraine people.
I'm Scottish. Honey, I'm Scottish.
Yeah, and
level up those insults, please. Don't insult me by coming at me with this weak sauce.
Okay. Now I'm going to bid you goodbye.
Okay. Fucking
die painfully, I hope. Okay, so that was the shit show. I hope you all enjoyed it. Yeah, I really, really despise both those guys. I mean, I just want to, I don't think that I need to belabor the point now, do I? Really despise those guys because ultimately they know the truth. That's the bottom line issue. They know the truth. They know that this NATO conflict is pointless and that the Ukraine people and the Ukraine nation are going to be annihilated for no reason other than the egotism and the brutality of the West. And that's a fact. And they know it. But both of these individuals, one who was too much of a chicken shit to stay for long, yeah, he squirted out because he's a pussy. And the other one, the bilious bullshitter, you know, did anything he say have anything rational? No, it was just bilious bullshit because he knows the truth. Both of them knew the truth. At least the first one, Destiny, he knew what was coming. He got the fuck out of Dodge because he knew. He knew that he wasn't going to be able to counter anything that I've said in this broadcast. And every single point of every single one of those slides is accurate. You go check. You go look through each and every one of them. And I want to make my position incredibly clear, and I'll say it again, just to be absolutely clear. I think that this war is a tragedy and a catastrophe for Ukraine. It should have ended months ago. It should have ended during the negotiations in Istanbul. It would have been a ceasefire and an implementation of the Minsk II agreements. But instead, the Zelensky regime, egged on by NATO and warmongers like these two pieces of shit who were on my broadcast, now, it has led to the destruction of the Ukrainian nation, but much more tragically than that. Who gives a shit about land? What matters is the deaths of literally hundreds of thousands of Ukraine soldiers, the flower of the Ukrainian nation, the young men who would grow into the men who would lead the country, who would build the country. They've been killed for nothing. They've been maimed irreparably. Today, I saw a soldier at the supermarket, a man in uniform. He didn't have his right leg. And he was on crutches, a big guy, strong. I mean, you could tell like one of those bulls of men, you know, I mean, like a big fucker, right? He was like basically about 1.5 times me. And I'm a fairly big guy. I'm 6 feet, about 190. What's that in kilos? About 85 kilos. Well, it's actually a little more. I'm getting fat, but no, the truth is I'm 87 kilos as of this morning. I'm 6 feet. And this guy was big, soldier, you know, one of those fuckers who just charges, a hard charger, you could tell. And he'd lost his right leg from roughly the knee down. And that man, of course, he's going to continue to live, and good for him. But, you know, it's going to be rough for him. It's not going to be easy. And you can say, oh, losing a leg, that's not that big of a deal. Have you ever had a broken ankle? I have. It's fucking horrible. You know, the limited movement that you have, the inability to do even the most simple things because of just one injury. And I had just a broken ankle, big deal. This guy doesn't have a leg anymore. And that guy would have had a leg, and countless other men would have had their lives, had not their limbs and their lives been stolen by NATO, the NATO warmongers, and people like these two bastards who were on. I'm sorry if I got it heated during this conversation, but it's something that I feel very, very strongly about. I think it's despicable what has happened. And the NATO encouragement of this pointless war has led to nothing but misery for hundreds of thousands, for millions of people who have been displaced. And most tragically of all, the deaths of all these people for nothing. Because the outcome is inevitable. And it didn't even need to happen. It was all Western provocation that led to this. Please excuse me if I have not delivered a show that is as conversational and entertaining as the other broadcasts. I hope that you'll join me on Thursday. I'm going to have Jackson Hinkle and What If Alt History. If you don't know What If Alt History, I mean, you guys probably know Jackson Hinkle. He's been on the show a couple of times. What If Alt History, I've tried to get him on for a while now. And now that I have my Twitter back, thank you to you. Thank you to you, my listeners who, you know, lobbied and got me back on Twitter. And I will always be thankful for that. I was able to finally get in touch with What If Alt History. He's a smart customer. Even when you totally disagree with him, he has such exceptionally good points that you have to listen to him and entertain his arguments and try to figure out why he is wrong or why you might be wrong. So I highly suggest you check out his channel, and I highly suggest you join us. It'll be on Thursday at 8 p.m. Ukraine time. What's that? 1 p.m. Eastern time. So I really look forward to seeing you there. And yeah, and show me out if you enjoyed this show. If you thought it was a good show, hit a +1. And if you thought it was just a bad show, remember, notice, was it entertaining or was it shit? Hit me with a +1 if you found it entertaining and a 0 if you thought it was shit. I'll wait for you guys to catch up. Yeah, and you know, while we're at it, I'm going to smoke another cigarette. And you know, here's the end of the broadcast. So the only people who are going to be listening to the broadcast are people who are, you know, bored. And if you guys want to hang out for a little bit, I'm going to smoke a last cigarette. My computer has charged back up again, so I'll be able to go to my terrace and smoke cigarettes. And yeah, so we'll do another cigarette break, and yeah. So people seem to have enjoyed it. I'm glad. I'm glad. I'm going to bring on my moderator, one of my moderators, who's JJ. JJ, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Well, it's going okay. I have to say I am a bit disappointed at the show.
Go ahead. Tell me why specifically.
Because you got too heated, and I
Yeah.
think that you need to be able to take a beat, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So if
Yes,
somebody's
I
annoying
agree.
you,
I agree with you. By the way, I did get very heated because I knew that they knew, and that's the thing that bothered me. I'm sorry. Go ahead, JJ.
yeah. So I'm kind of disappointed about that personally because it was. I thought it had the potential to actually be something that would actually potentially show people the reality of the war, and I think it got lost in the mudslinging. So there you go. But it is what it is. So
Yeah, well, it's too fresh for me now to give an appraisal, but I'm going to leave it on no matter what because I figure that warts and all, if my performance was subpar or too emotional or just a bad performance, or I just cut off these two individuals too much, is that I could see where they were going to start to lie, and I just couldn't stand it. It was really just beyond me. I could not stand to hear the bullshit and trying to equivocate and slip out. I just couldn't stand it. And JJ, I see your point, and I would agree with it actually.
so well, I was going to say I don't know what you would do about it. I mean, like count to 5 or something if you feel suddenly that you're going to go off on one. I mean, I don't know, but I'm just suggesting.
No. I mean, look, I'm not going to do another one of these shows because I find it deeply unpleasant. It was just deeply, deeply unpleasant to be with these two individuals because I don't respect them. But they were the only pro-NATO people around. And all the NATO supporters, they know enough. The more reputable ones, they know enough. And that's the thing that bothers me. I mean, I have to go back to the point. If you know the facts enough, you realize what's going on, and you realize how despicable this whole shit show really is. The shit show meaning the war.
Well, that's the thing. I don't know that to be the case. I would have at least given them the benefit of the doubt and showed them. One of the things when you're dealing with something like, say, cult deprogramming, what you have to do is show people, okay, there's this thing here. This doesn't jive with what you're talking about. And then things can slowly dawn on people. I couldn't tell you what either of those two actually believes, and if they're just chills. I don't know, and I didn't get to know, and I think that's kind of a tragedy of the show.
No, my failure. Simple as that. I mean, you don't have to gussy it up. I mean, not you specifically. I'm talking generally. Yeah, it was my failure. But oof. Yeah.
I know Brian Boletic is in the chat, so I don't know if you want to.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I did actually put it in. I've actually, while you were actually talking on StreamYard, I've actually been putting in the private chat a bunch of things, including that he was in the chat. So I don't know if you want to ask him on.
I'm going to go to Twitter. Brian, if you're there, I'm going to have you on. I'm sending you via Twitter DMs the link to join. It's sort of like my head hurts. I'm just really out of sorts. But I'd actually like to go to bed, but poor Brian is up like way later than I am, so I'm definitely going to have him on at least for a few minutes, because if he'd been on, I think it would have been a much better show. Brian, I just sent you the DM, by the way. Yeah, because it just so bothered me. Oh man, you have no idea. Because I could see how they were wriggling. Yeah.
But for
anyway.
example, to LazerPig's point about, oh well, there are so many Abrams tanks. Well, that is true. They're too heavy. They use too much fuel, and they need too much maintenance to be anywhere near effective in Ukraine. That's just the reality of the physicality of the Abrams tank.
On top of that, they're turbine driven as opposed to
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's why they use that's why they use too much fuel, because they're turbine driven. They will do a specific task, and if you have all the logistics and everything, yes. I mean, if you look at, say, the Iraq War, yes, you can see how they were used and everything was fine, but you don't have the same logistics infrastructure to be able to get all the fuel there, to be able to have the people to do the maintenance. So I mean, they can send thousands of Abrams tanks, but it really won't make any difference. Plus the fact, of course, that just in tank battles, obviously the Russians have autoloaders in their tanks, so that's a major advantage they have just straight tank battles between forces. But even then, they couldn't train the Ukrainians to be of sufficient quality to even take on the Russians that way, and they get decimated by artillery even before they got there. So
and here's the devil himself, Brian Berletic. How's it going, Brian?
It's going okay. Yeah, it's like 2 a.m. here, but I made the big mistake. I made the big mistake of tuning in just to see how it was going, and then I think the thing that you could do to shut these people down when they start talking about, oh, do you stand with Ukraine? Do you support Ukraine? Where was LazerPig in 2014 when the U.S. openly overthrew the government? And then from that point onward was using Ukraine as a battering ram openly in front of the entire world for the last 8, now 9 years. If you cared about Ukraine, and then from 2014 onward, they radicalized the country. They shut down the opposition. They shut down media. They shut down the Russian language. So when he's citing polls now, I mean, how accurate do you think polls like that are in a country where the opposition, the opposition leaders in shackles, and the media is off the airwaves? I mean, and you're shelling part of your own country. So polls like that, what do they actually mean? And part of your country, part of your country, millions of people in your country either left because they want nothing to do with it from 2014 onward, or they took up arms to fight against the regime in Kiev. And it is a regime because there's nothing democratic at all after 2014. I'm not going to sit there and defend the government from before 2014. I have no doubts that it was corrupt. But what it was doing was balancing its relationship between East and West for Ukraine's relative best interests compared to now, where it's being dismantled brick by brick. So you're absolutely right, Gonzalo. These people are opportunists. They're doing this is their big payday. Now, I bet if you look at their channels, a lot of them they're doing better now than ever with this Ukraine.
Yeah, I didn't bring up that fact, but you're absolutely right. That they make more money towing the NATO line. Look, this guy LazerPig did a whole video critiquing one of my roundtable episodes where you were present, and it was Armchair Warlord, and I forgot who was the third.
I think it was Alex from History Legends.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. One of the usual suspects, right? And so, he did that video, and our actual live stream got something like 80, 90,000 views, something like that. And his critique of what we said, which is just a bunch of, like I said, bilious bullshit, got over 600,000 views. That's like the typical,
And there's a lot of people across the Western media that are really cashing in on this, and it snowballs. Once they see it gets a positive reaction, they just keep doubling down on it until they're doing it full hilt, and they're not interested in reality at all. He's talking about singing the Ukrainian national anthem. I got to be honest with you, Gonzalo. I was in the U.S. Marine Corps. I can't sing the U.S. national anthem is meaningless. I mean, it's just it just shows you how superficial and empty everything these type of people say actually is. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Let me ask you something. See, you're a man of integrity, and I respect you. Okay, because you call it like you see it. If you towed the NATO bullshit line, you know that you'd make a shit ton more money, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have a military background, and I could do it much more convincing than someone like Ben Hodges or Paul Massaro or any of these complete buffoons who, I mean, at least if you're going to tell a lie, at least try to make it last a week or two. Don't say like by next week Russia will surrender, 7 months ago, because then you look stupid. Like Ben Hodges has actually done that on multiple occasions. So yeah, I could be doing that. You're on a list. You're on the really scary death list. I'm on the official Ukrainian government Russian propaganda list. That doesn't make me feel comfortable. I'm not
left out. I feel honestly left out because you got the nice, clean, official one. I got the one of the crazies. That's no fair. I mean, if I were in both lists, okay. But, just being in the groggy list and not the cool, the cool list, or maybe the groggy list is the cool list. I don't know. What does chat think?
Keep trying, Gonzalo. I think you can make both lists. But also you've been picked up by the SBU, so that has to count for something. Also, and then just think about it. Look what you're doing. Look at what you're doing, and then think about the fact that you got picked up by the SBUs. Does that happen in a normal country? I don't think that happens in a normal country. And people like LazerPig and Destiny, or whatever his name is. I mean, these people are more than happy to look past that, pretend they care about Ukraine. The summation of the West leadership almost openly are saying they're using Ukraine. I mean, read the newspaper. They have articles where it's like, this is a great investment. We don't have to spend any of our blood, just a little bit of money to overextend Russia. They even have policy papers from think tanks funded by the U.S. government, literally titled "Extending Russia," talking about sending lethal aid to Ukraine.
If you don't know, he's referring to the RAND Corporation, which is Brian's bête noire. It is his black beast. He cannot, he can't, he wants to
get through a conversation.
Well, why do you think he's bald? He tore off his hair because of the RAND Corporation, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
I was gonna say they should call it the Rando Corporation. Because honestly, the random stuff they come up with, they think that the US can do anything. I mean, I remember, if memory serves, that there was a report to do with the Vietnam War, and it was from the Rand Corporation, and it was part of all the Vietnam papers that were released and were put into the Pentagon papers that were put into the congressional record, and it was all completely and utterly nuts. There was no reality to it all, and they haven't changed. The problem is people still listen to them.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, JJ, I want to thank you publicly for having been the moderator. JJ was moderating in case my internet went out in the middle of the broadcast, and he was going to shut it down. I told the guests beforehand why JJ was going to be in the broadcast, not as a participant, but as sort of like a fail-safe switch if things went haywire insofar as my internet connection. JJ, thank you so much. And it must have been tedious for you, but I so appreciate it. And to also, I'm looking here at the chat, Pamela, Reckless Abandon, guys, thank you so much for moderating. I hope you didn't have much trouble with any trolls or anything of the sort. one of the things I did deliberately was to make sure that the only people who could talk in chat were people who had been subscribers for at least a week, because I knew that Destiny and LazerPig were going to try to brigade the chat because it's their modus operandi. They've done it countless times before. And so that's why I put that limiting factor, because if you actually give a shit about this channel, then you're subscribed already. And if you don't, well.
And also, I mean, straight from the beginning, and before Destiny ran off, you were asking very simple questions, and they really are yes or no questions. What you know, when you hear someone talking about how complicated something is or using the word nuance, it's because they know it's not true. They don't know how to explain it other than just outright lying. They want to try to walk around it in as much of a complex way as possible, so you don't even really realize they're trying to walk around the truth. And that's what they're doing. It's an easy question. Well, I forget what the first question was that you asked.
I can bring it
was
up.
just
hang on,
yeah, it's so straightforward.
Actually, I'd really appreciate you guys walking through this presentation, and you guys tell me if you know, I was off the wall or fairly reasonable. Hang on just a second. Let me just share it. Yeah, this is actually going to be a good experiment because, you know, I'm not blowing sunshine up your ass, Brian, but truly, you're one of the guys whose opinion I respect the most of the commentary community, second only to the boys of the Duran. And I don't think that you're feeling left out because of it, because they really are.
They really are. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I watch all their videos.
I mean, if somebody told me that you're a second to the Duran, high compliment. You know, I mean,
that is a high. For me, that is a high compliment to be, you know, included in the same sentence, I think.
Yeah.
So this is ignorant or evil. I would say they're knowingly evil. So that's the first very easy true or false.
Okay. This was simple. I thought the Kiev regime was doing nothing to provoke Putin into Putin's invasion was groundless. Putin has imperial ambitions and is inherently evil.
Yes, obviously
that seems pretty straightforward to me.
Yeah. It's obviously false. Everyone, you know, people. There's a lot of Western analysts who wouldn't want to associate with us, who are in the Western establishment, who have warned for years and years that if NATO keeps poking around in Ukraine, they are going to provoke a situation. And all you have to do to figure this one out is ask yourself, what if China overthrew the government of Canada and then started militarizing Canada? What would the United States do? Would they sit there and say, well, it's, you know, the Canadian people, it's up to them to decide what they want to do? I mean, it's not up to them to decide. Their government was overthrown. They're a captured state, and they're being militarized. They're being turned into a battering ram against the U.S. So obviously, the U.S. has to do something about that, and obviously, Russia had to do something about Ukraine. It's so and there's, like I said, there are all kinds of people. Former in the State Department. I mean, there's a long list of people who have come out and talked about this. So, and Putin is not an imperialist. He's not trying to build an empire. By the way, Ukraine used to be part of Russia. So
yeah.
I was going to say
at one point, I think it was Destiny who started saying there are a lot of conjunctions there or something like that. You know, like you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say on Putin, I've actually watched him over the years, and the thing that I've noticed is the way he seems to operate is that it's almost like he's the child of a sick motherland, that he is trying to put Russia back together again, first economically and then militarily. One of the interesting things that people might not know is that, just a very small thing but very important, which was that the Russian army up until the end of 2013 didn't wear socks. They had pieces of cloth, square pieces of cloth, which they would wrap their feet in before they put them in the boots. Now, from a Western perspective, you think they didn't have socks. Well, yes, that's true. And these the footcloths went back all the way to, I think, Peter the Great. So this is something that's been going for a very long time. But since 2013, they have properly remilitarized, and they've done a great deal. There's the Brian will probably remember what the name is, but they've got a whole for the army. They have a whole suite of different products, or uniforms, webbing, night vision, weapons. I forget. There's a particular term.
Yeah, there's a word for that kit. It's for the entire kit altogether.
Yeah.
I can't think of it off the top,
anyway,
because there was I think there might have been a couple of them.
So anyway, let me get back to this, because I really want to go over this with you guys. I mean, since we're here, and since the people in chat, you guys got nothing better to do, and I certainly don't. and poor Brian, I don't think that he's going to be going to sleep anytime soon, or JJ either. Well, JJ's in the UK. It's still relatively early there. But anyway, so the next one was.
Sorry, can I just interrupt?
Yeah.
Because I'm here. I am on StreamYard, and you've managed to peg the comments at 10,000. So I guess it doesn't go over 10,000 on StreamYard. So you've had over 10,000 over 10,000 comments in the chat.
The chat was blowing up. Yeah.
Yeah. What was the sentiment? Because I wasn't really paying attention to the chat. Sometimes I glance at it, but not really. What was the sentiment of the chat?
Well, to me, it was flying past, so I didn't catch that much of it. There were a few people sort of spamming with emojis. That I did notice that, but it was quite difficult because it was flying past. So I did catch a few.
We'll have to check it out later. Yeah. So anyway, these three data points: the constant shelling of ethnic Russians in Donbass since 2014, Kiev regime figures calling for ethnic cleansing, and NATO expansion of into Ukraine with the likelihood of nuclear weapons. Is any of this truly, and Brian, I'm going to lean on you here and give the honest, true appraisal. Is any of this false, or is it all true, or is there a nuance that the question is eliding by way of how it's phrased?
This one, actually, I would say the likelihood of nuclear weapons in Ukraine, I mean, I would say it's probably 50-50, but I don't think that's the point. I think NATO being in Ukraine is already an unacceptable national security threat for Russia. It's one of these things that Russia had to accept because they were weak, the constant expansion eastward. But Ukraine is where they definitively, and for a very long time, this wasn't a recent thing, they definitively drew the line at Ukraine. And NATO said, no, we're going to just do it anyway. We think you're still weak. You're a paper tiger. You won't do anything. And it's exactly what they're doing with China over Taiwan. That is the red line. And if you cross it, there's going to be an armed conflict. So nuclear weapons doesn't even need to be in the equation. It's already bad enough that and de facto NATO was already militarizing Ukraine. They were in Ukraine. Their troops were in Ukraine. They were transferring weapons over to Ukraine. It's actually worse than Ukraine being a NATO member, because now Ukraine can be a battering ram, and NATO is not encumbered by Article 5. They can do whatever they want. They could, So I think it's actually worse that that maybe nuclear weapons isn't even part of it. But no, it's very easy to answer these questions, though. I mean, that is still an easy one to answer. Just NATO being in Ukraine is bad enough.
Okay.
And yeah, shelling Donbass. Yeah.
I would like to slightly disagree here, because my understanding is that the Russians were concerned about Aegis Ashore, which essentially has the launchers that can actually house Tomahawk cruise missiles, which can obviously have nuclear warheads, and therefore having them on the board. I think there are some. Is it Poland? Brian might know.
Well, it doesn't matter. But your point is well taken. But it's basically to the same point that there was the possibility, the non-trivial possibility, of having nuclear-capable weapons in Ukraine that could threaten Moscow directly with too brief a time for any kind of response. So it was
correct.
True. Yeah,
exactly. Aegis Ashore is a missile defense system, and that the whole point is they would launch nukes at Russia, and then they would use their missile defense system to prevent Russia from launching back. So it would be for unilateral first strike.
Yeah.
Okay, so these 3 points were apart from the nuance of the third one, but the first two are uncontroversial. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Now the next three of Putin invaded Ukraine because Western bioweapons, and by the way, I mean, the Americans admitted it, and this LazerPig kept obfuscating and bullshitting. Or was that me?
Well, I think what he was doing was he was trying to split hairs, where he was saying there wasn't, these were labs that were doing something extremely suspicious. It's something that if Russia was doing on the border with the US, it would be unacceptable. It would not be tolerated even for a moment. The fact that you didn't find a finished biological weapon is irrelevant. It's exactly what the US invaded Iraq for. They said, well, they could, and they're talking about hitting Iran because not that they have nuclear weapons, but that the possibility that they could develop them in short time. So you have these labs in Ukraine for what? You think the U.S. was there to help people in Ukraine? Get real.
Yeah, I was
Wake
going to say,
when Victoria Nuland said that she was worried about the Russians getting to these labs, it wasn't that she was saying, oh, well, they're developing the cure for cancer and they're very worried that the research might be, screwed up. No, they were worried that the Russians would get hold of this shit and use it against them. So, I mean, that was her actual concern. I'm sorry, JJ, I interrupted.
No, I was about to make exactly the same point, and that Victoria Nuland actually on the record, I can't remember, was it in Congress that she answered the question, and whoever it was asked, are there biolabs in Ukraine? And she's like, oh well, there are biological facilities and all this.
Yeah, it was with the Marco Rubio testimony. It was
that was
Marco Rubio testimony. Yeah, and he kept pointing out, oh, well, Marco Rubio, he's a neocon. He's in favor of this shit. So what the fuck are you talking about? Just because he's a Republican and the current regime is a Democrat doesn't mean anything. It's the Uniparty. So anyway, okay. So
go
ahead.
One other thing. Now, I don't know whether this is true or not, but there have been consistent rumors that at least some of these biolabs were actually engaged in trying to create ethnic bioweapons that could target particular ethnic groups, such as
genospecific.
Brian would actually know a lot about that because we're going to be doing a broadcast at some point when he's good and ready to talk. Oh,
I'm ready for that. I'm actually ready. I did that video already. It's already up. I'm going to be doing additional videos, and I'm ready to do that anytime you are. Gonzalo, just FYI.
No, I mean,
I could do it like the quality right now. If this is okay, maybe I could do it.
Like now? No.
Yeah, because no. I mean the quality of because I'm not at my office right now, so if this is okay, the quality that maybe on Saturday or around Saturday we could arrange something. Yeah.
No, I'd much prefer you to do it in your office, nice and calm.
Okay.
And you got all your gear and you're all set. Okay. Because but just for the convenience.
Yeah.
And also, chat. Brian and chat, excuse us for like scheduling shit on the broadcast, but Brian is having a wonderful time with his family, and we're dipping into his family time. And Brian, thank you.
Everyone's asleep right. Yeah, everyone's asleep right now except for me, because again, it's my fault. I should never have tuned in.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, like everybody likes a good shit show.
But this, so back to the genospecific bioweapons. I mean, this is something, again, you need to read Western policy papers. It's all in there. And again, if Russia or China were putting in policy papers, genospecific bioweapons would be a really politically useful tool. That would be it. Then the U.S. would never let that go. But this is what U.S. policymakers put in their policy papers. And they were talking about that all the way back in 2000. And this is something that is very possible now with biotechnology where it is right now. It's extremely scary. And I bet there's a lot of things going on right now, and people have been hinting toward it with this latest health issue that you can't really say on YouTube, but so it's a legitimate concern, and it's something that every country is talking about and preparing for and creating contingencies against. The fact that the U.S. had bio labs in Ukraine, it's just, again, it's completely unacceptable. It's unacceptable behavior.
Yeah, so the first of this second slide of Putin's motivation for invading Ukraine. The Western bioweapons, true. Second one, Kiev regime was unwilling to abide by Minsk II peace agreement. I think that this is fairly uncontroversial. Yeah.
Well, we've had three people come out and actually say it. We've had Merkel, we've had Macron, and we've had Poroshenko. So we've had three people say exactly the same thing, that the only reason that Minsk was agreed to was to give Ukraine the time to build up forces to take the Donbass.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's
exactly right.
And I forgot what LazerPig said to that particular statement. He tried to equate.
Yeah. Again, he's arguing about stuff that even the U.S. is not even trying to hide. They're not even hiding it anymore.
Yeah. And so far as the Kiev regime about to launch an invasion of the Donbass, this is pretty much settled fact, right?
Yeah, and again, he's the one who's saying, "Oh, if you love Ukraine, do what the Ukrainian people want." Well, what about the people in the Donbass region? Do they get to decide? And did you poll them? Do they want to still be part of this? It's essentially an anti-Russian project from 2014 onward. That's what they did, and this has actually been going on in Ukraine for over 100 years. This is what empire had been doing to Ukraine for generations. This is why it's such a basket case to this day and so divided. And
Brian, can I ask you something, a personal question? Not personal, but do you regret not coming on this shit show? Or are you
I think if I got in there, I think I could have kept you calmed down, and we could have really made a fool out of at least LazerPig. Destiny, I've heard him debate Jackson Hinkle. You could ask Jackson when he comes on Thursday. The guy is impossible. I mean, he's like an eel. It's like an eel dipped in oil. You're not gonna grab a hold of him. He's not gonna stick to anything. And he's just going to wiggle his way out of everything.
I think that's why he quit, because he knew that I wasn't going to let him wiggle his way out of it. And he's like, oh, this. I mean, at least he was honest about it, because he was like, because the tactic that he typically uses is that he's a very, very intelligent man, and nobody's disputing that. And so what he does is that he sort of like perceives where the argument is going. When somebody else is speaking, he anticipates what point they're going to make. And if it's a point that he can't really debate or can't go against, he will throw a distraction of all sorts, of whatever sort is available. I mean, anything from trivial grammar issues to just something completely out of left field in order to derail you from getting to your point. That's why I did these slideshows, because I figured that, I want to stick to the point and just be relentless about sticking to the point. And I wanted to make sure that all the points were absolutely reasonable. And so since we're here, I want to go through all these points to make sure that nobody can claim, oh, any of these points was unreasonable on my part, or any of them were ambiguous or debatable, seriously debatable. Okay, so these three were good on them.
Yeah, I was going to say, I do think Brian may have kept things rather more on track, though I still think Andre would have just annihilated them.
No, Andre would have quit. I mean, because I actually reached out to Andrei Martynov, who's been a guest. He's a wonderful man, and he's Russian. He lives in the United States. Smart man, former naval officer, and he is adamant about his opinions. He's just like lapidary.
Yes.
He's like a tank. I mean, even though he's a naval officer, he's like a tank. But I think that he would have just been throwing up his arms in the air and just said, "Fuck this shit! I've got better things to do with my time." And so, yeah, I think that would have happened. But anyway, to go back to the slide, the conflict. I said the conflict in Ukraine is in fact a proxy war between the U.S. and NATO against Russia. The goal of the US and NATO is regime change in Russia and the physical breakup of the Russian Federation into several smaller countries. That is the destruction of the Russian nation.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, indisputably. Everyone in Washington is saying this. Everyone across the Western media is saying this. I saw Oliver North on Fox saying, "Our bullets, their blood," and then I've actually heard people and as inappropriate as that sounds, I've actually heard people repeating that as if it's a great point that he's bringing up. And there's op-eds by all kinds of people who have been in different, the US, the UK, the EU governments saying, yeah, this is like an investment. We're investing in grinding down Russia's military. And then again, the Rand Corporation is funded by the US government, and they wrote an entire policy paper about doing exactly this. It's verbatim what they wrote in their paper is exactly what they're doing right now. So indisputable.
Okay, so this was not unfair on my part.
No, it's the absolute truth.
I would also say there is, in fact, I've just put it in the chat. There is a website, and it's freenationsrf.org, which is all about how they want to basically cut Russia up into different sections.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things actually is what's his name? Vil Mazyanov, I believe it is the vice president of the independent of the independent government in exile of Tatarstan, and he was the chap that came up with the story about Novichok, if you remember that.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, so that bullshit story about the script. No, not Skripal.
It was
Skripal also, and Navalny also.
Yeah.
So anyway, let me throw in one more thing there. National Endowment for Democracy has a multitude of programs actually literally working on that to encourage separatism in different parts of Russia and in the former Soviet states, to turn them against Russia, create battering rams against Russia. And they're doing the exact same thing here in Southeast Asia. And these are all programs that you can look up. It's on the NED's website. Or if they've taken them down,
they're bragging.
And you can dig in and you can find even more that are not listed there. And it's so obvious what they're doing. And for again, people who are going to sit there and say, no, I think NATO has noble intentions. What were they doing in Libya or Syria or Afghanistan or Iraq? I mean, they've admitted that was all predicated on lies, and that it was to maintain their international order, which basically is their primacy over everyone else. That is what it is. It is modern day imperialism.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have to add that the National Endowment for Democracy is actually it's something that was created that came out of CIA. It's what CIA used to do, but now it got transferred into a separate entity, because then the CIA can say, "Oh no, we're not doing this," and Ned can go, "Oh, we're nothing to do with CIA." So it's a
democracy. We're promoting democracy. What's wrong? You hate democracy?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what they say. That's what they say. Literally.
Okay, so the next slide was basically a prelude to a series of slides that was going to analyze the current conflict on economic, diplomatic, military, and social levels, right? And so the statement was, the US and NATO, directly as well as through their Zelensky regime proxy, are winning this war against Russia.
Okay.
This, by the way, this statement was predicated on the previous slide, saying that this was a proxy war to break up Russia. And so this was just a prelude to the next slide, which is the one with the substance. And I don't think that anybody would. I mean, whether it's winning or not is an issue for debate. But then economically,
I would like.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I would just like to make a point actually, because they are winning in one particular way on the PR front. Yes, exactly. That's all they're winning. Yeah. That is the only way they can be considered winning. And this is one of the interesting things I've noted is Kissinger came out and said they need to start actually talking to the Russians to resolve the conflict, because Kissinger knows this is going badly, and if they don't negotiate now, they can lose completely. And he's right.
Well, the thing is that they are going to lose completely because the Russians will not negotiate with the West anymore because they don't trust them. Because I think that the revelations of Merkel and Hollande in those interviews, it just poisoned the well definitively insofar as any kind of negotiation, because the Russians simply won't believe anything that they say, no matter how many people sign it, no matter how much, protestations of goodwill. The Russians just aren't going to believe them anymore. That's my thinking. Brian, do you disagree?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. They admitted that they're lying, they're negotiating in bad faith. So what else is there to say? And again, Russia cannot negotiate with Ukraine, and Ukraine cannot negotiate with Russia because Ukraine is not in charge of anything. LazerPig kept talking about sovereignty in Ukraine. They lost their sovereignty in 2014. They have no sovereignty. Kiev doesn't decide anything. They do what they're told. They're being told to bleed themselves out to hurt Russia as bad as possible. And that's what they're doing. They're going to lose the whole country doing it. And you were making a really good point about how if you actually cared about Ukraine, you'd want this war to stop. The US has done this over and over again, these proxy wars of theirs, and they destroy entire countries in the process. Remember the freedom fighters in Libya who turned out to be Al-Qaeda, and the freedom fighters in Syria that turned out to be ISIS, and now we have the quote-unquote freedom fighters in Ukraine, which are at the heart of it. I'm not going to say that they're all Nazis, but at the center of it, the most enthusiastic, they are utterly not. I was just looking in Newsweek about how NATO said, "Oh, we didn't realize that some." This is an older article, but they're like, "We didn't realize. We're sorry, we didn't realize that some photo we took had the Nazi black sun in it for it was like National Women's something day."
Yeah,
you remember that?
Yeah. It was pretty damn funny, I mean, they have no idea. And there's this article in the Guardian that somebody, JJ, you were the one who showed me. That they were talking about the if you have that Guardian article, I can put it up real quick.
Hold on a second, I'll have to find it.
Well, what happened was that one of the trucks, right? It was like a pro-Ukrainian piece, right? In the Guardian, surprise, surprise. And one of the pictures showed this wagon type vehicle, like military, right? And you know what it had painted on it on the side? 1488.
Yeah. I'm sure it's just a coincidence.
Oh, it's just a coincidence. Yeah, it means nothing. Right?
How about what's his name? David Axe of I think it's Forbes. And he's like, Azov regiment has been totally denazified. And he shows a screenshot from a recent video of Azov in action. And if you find the actual video where that screenshot is from, it's actually a bunch of vehicles going by, and they all have like Nazi symbols on the sides of the armored vehicles. And two of the armored vehicles were donated by NATO. So the idea that NATO and the US are not sending weapons to Nazis in Ukraine is a lie. There's pictures of it all over the Western media, not Telegram, not RT, the Western media. I saw I posted it on Twitter, and I always put the link to everything. If you go through my timeline, you will see a Nazi in Ukraine holding a Mark 19. This is a 40 millimeter automatic grenade launcher. So there's a Nazi holding a US automatic grenade launcher. How did he get that? It's Syria all over again. Oops, did we accidentally arm Al-Qaeda instead of the freedom fighters? There were no freedom fighters. They were always Al-Qaeda. They knew that. They were talking about doing it years in advance, and they did the exact same thing. They overthrew the government in Ukraine in 2014 on purpose to get this proxy war going. That was the whole point, because if you had a government in power, no matter how corrupt, as long as they weren't suicidal, they never would have went for it. So that's how we got to where we are today.
Okay, I'll put it in the private chat.
No. Put it. I think you can share screen.
Oh, hold on a second. Let me just.
Yeah, and no pictures of you with the farm animals. Okay.
Hold on a sec. Where's the present? Share screen. Yeah, where are we? Window. That one.
Okay. So anyway, while we're taking a break, I'm actually making popcorn. So yeah, that's the
as you've been known to do. Yeah.
Yeah, scroll it down,
down.
scroll it down, scroll it down.
Yeah, I'm going down. Yeah. There we are.
There we are. Can you zoom it in a little? You can zoom it in when you do it, when you zoom in on the actual page.
Oh, is that better?
Yeah, I think so. How's it look, chat? Do you guys see it?
1488.
1488. It's just a coincidence because that vehicle just happened to be the 1,488th vehicle of that particular unit.
Yeah.
I think perhaps we should explain for the audience, for those who don't know, 14 is a white
it's a white
nationalist thing.
Yeah.
It's 14 words. I forget what they are. And 88. Well, H is the eighth letter of the alphabet.
Yeah.
So it's HH, Heil Hitler. So that's what the 1488 actually means for those who don't know.
And it's pretty knuckle-dragging, childish nonsense too when you really think about it. And the U.S. has cultivated an entire society within Ukrainian society that is all about this, and it's exactly what they were doing in Syria, and they can destroy an entire country doing this, and that's what they're in the process of doing. If you care about Ukraine, you'd speak up against this, and you would want this to stop. You would not egg it on and pretend that this has anything to do with Ukraine's sovereignty, because they have no sovereignty, not right now.
No,
Ukraine can't fight Russia to get their sovereignty back because Russia didn't take it. The U.S. took it in 2014.
Let me bring back the issue, because I want to go through the point, because look, I didn't have any I didn't consult anybody insofar as these slides are concerned, and like I said, the thing that is uppermost in my mind is that nobody could consider it unfair, because I just wanted for them to stick to the point and not meander. And
Gonzalo, I just gotta, because when you were bringing up the economics, LazerPig was like, oh, prices of food is doubled in Moscow and cars have tripled. And I'm like, if that was actually true, I think we'd never hear the end of that. And I'm sure that there's someone claiming that is happening, but I know people in Moscow and they didn't tell me that. There is inflation, but it's not like they can get food. I think there were like a couple of items that in the beginning they had to, it's like a supply chain. When something gets cut off, you obviously have to compensate. And then it rebounds. It's a huge country, and they have a lot of friends around the world. They can find these things elsewhere.
Yeah,
and this was an issue going all the way back to 2014. Yeah, with the sanctions, they were finding alternatives since 2014. So double food prices. Maybe some items are doubled, but the vast majority of the food is affordable, is not doubled.
Oh no, I mean lots of things can double. I mean, like cigarettes have doubled here. So yeah, it's annoying. It was just trying to obfuscate the issue, because that's the thing that drives me up the wall, that they're so fucking dishonest. Because my own approach insofar as knowledge is concerned, I want to be as accurate as possible. If I make a mistake, I'm happy to admit it and correct myself, because my thinking has always been, oh, do you hear it? It's gunfire. Do you hear the gunfire?
Gonzalo, I thought it was the wolf. I thought maybe it was the wolf scratching on your door.
Well, no, and for the chat, it's just popcorn. It's no big deal. No,
I was going to say, I do. Russia hasn't been sanctioned, I think, in some areas since 2014.
Yes.
I think there were food sanctions, if I recall. They put counter sanctions on food from the EU, and that's helped Russia immensely. So, for example, there was nobody making cheese. Exactly, I was about to say cheese. There you go. Great minds think alike. Yeah, that's one thing that the Russians never made, and they always imported it. And now they've got their own cheese factories, and they don't need to import from the West anymore. So the West has actually shot itself in the foot to a very large extent here.
And JJ, I mean, that we can look all across the Western media. I mean, just type in Russian sanctions, EU, and see what kind of headlines pop up across the Western media. It's all about how they're backfiring, how they're not working, about how just give it some more time because they're not working right now, but they claim that they will eventually. That's what the West is admitting. Again, it's not RT. It's not the Russian government saying it. It's the Western media. It's Western analysts. It's Western leaders admitting that the sanctions. I mean, what package is the EU up to now? 9 or how
I'm not
many
sure if it's 9
packages?
or 10. I'm not sure. I
No,
think it's
they're
9.
they're
10?
on 10. No, they're on 10. The
Alright.
latest one is number 10. By the way, Chad is saying that I was very bad because I didn't let them spell out all of their wrongs, that I kept
Yeah.
interrupting them as soon as they started saying something that was inaccurate.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, Gonzalo, and you want me to be honest, you're
Yes.
not very cut out. You're not well cut out for debate because
No.
you get angry, and I get, the whole reason I'm up at almost 3 a.m. now is because I'm extremely angry. But listen, it's debating is not for everybody.
Oh no.
You're very good at having a conversation with people who are being honest, even if you disagree. You can disagree with them because we've disagreed about things in the past. We've had roundtables where people disagreed, but it was civilized. And you knew they were being honest, but these people are being dishonest. So it's hard not to let your anger overcome you and then just snap at them. But it wasn't a very good. It wasn't a good debate because they weren't allowed to talk. But I understand why you were upset. But
I could see the dishonesty coming. Okay, I mean, basically, the same thing that I'm accusing Destiny of doing. That when he sees a point that he can't refute. In my case, it wasn't a point that I can't refute. It was rather I could see the lie coming, and I just couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand for them to spew out their whole bullshit, and that was my failing. That was my inability to. How can I put it? When I see that somebody's trying to con me, I just say, why are you trying to cheat me? Why are you trying to con me? Why are you trying to crook me? Because I can see it.
Yeah. So I mean, the key to good debate is let them really establish some completely dishonest stance of theirs, like about the sovereignty of Ukraine. Let them spell it out for like 5 minutes straight, and then ask them, well, what about 2014 when John McCain was on stage with Swoboda Nazis? Why weren't you speaking out about that then? And how does anything that came out of that coup, basically a U.S. engineered coup, how does anything coming out of that represent Ukrainian sovereignty?
I did actually ask Gonzalo to give them time to respond.
Yes, I didn't see the private chat.
Yeah, because you were keyed up.
Yes, I was going to say, I'm too much of a Sigma Zen guy to get worked up. Someone has to stick a gun in my face for me to get worked up.
Well, it's that Brian is right. See, when I have conversations with honest people, honest interlocutors, and I disagree with them, I'm relaxed about it. It's no problem. I enjoy it because, like I said, I'm trying to figure out, well, is this guy wrong or am I wrong? Okay, but when I know that they're dishonest, I can't stomach it. I cannot stomach it. When LazerPig kept trying to insinuate homosexuality insofar as my attitude towards Destiny and use the gay thing, thinking that it would unnerve me, I was like, I know what you're doing. I can see it coming a mile away. And so it just bugs me. I can't help it. And if it is a failing on my part insofar as being a good debater. But I just can't stomach bullshit.
Yeah. That's no. I mean, it's not a big deal. I mean, it's debating is not for everybody. I try to avoid it because I can be extremely patient and civilized toward even the worst people out there. But like, why talk to dishonest people when you could use your time to just spend informing people, and you can demolish these falsehoods without ever having to bring someone on and listen to them being dishonest. Again, like, what about 2014? If you care about Ukrainian sovereignty, because I think that is the key. I think that is at the heart of this entire conversation, this whole debate. He started out with, do you care about, I'm not pro-NATO, I'm pro-Ukraine. So you're upset because Russia is attacking Ukraine right now. Why weren't you upset when the U.S. was attacking Ukraine, overthrowing its government, empowering literal Nazis? Are we going to pretend that? Because I've seen Destiny pretend that there are no Nazis. They don't have any. They don't have any positions in power in the government. The Azov Regiment is part of Ukraine's armed forces, so everyone in the government is supporting Nazis. Everyone. You don't need to have a party member if you have a segment of your army that are openly Nazis.
No. Oops. Are you guys still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah. Okay. Good. No, I had a little snafu here. I'll show the popcorn to the chat right now. You know.
Yeah. That is popcorn.
Yes, it is. It was not gunshots. It was just popcorn. Yeah, but I mean, I'm very disappointed in myself because I promised myself that I wouldn't let their bullshit get under my skin, but I couldn't help myself.
I think what you're doing now by going over the slides and just having an honest conversation about the slides, I think it'll kind of iron everything out. It'll iron it out.
So let's go through them real quick. Okay, 3 points. Sanctions against Russia have backfired. I think that we can agree that it's true.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The European economy is deindustrializing because of the sanctions against Russia. I mean, I didn't even mention Nord Stream, but yeah. Some people say that the slides were a bad idea. Oh, maybe.
I don't know. I think the slides were actually a good idea, but it's just,
to try and keep it online. Yeah. I would say Jacob Dreisen has actually written somewhere about the deindustrialization of Europe. I think he did have some. I think it was Jacob Dreisen. You know Jacob Dreisen, the Dreisen Report. Yes. Yeah. Right. Okay. I think he did have some about how aluminium smelters are shutting down because the electricity price is too high. And they had someone on, I think it was GB News here in the UK, from an ironworks in Wales, I think it was, saying, oh, well, yeah, the electricity price went so high that we actually made a loss. But of course, it's not something you can shut down and then start up again. You have to go, okay, I'm going to take a loss on that. And hopefully the prices go down to where we can make a profit again. So, yes, it is having a massive effect.
Yeah, either the energy prices go down or you're going to have to raise prices on your product.
Yeah, but you can't. The problem is with something like steel, unless it's a specialized steel product, you don't have the pricing power to do that. So you go out of business and the steel starts coming from China.
Yeah, very true. And India. Yeah. Okay. The third one is the Russian economy suffered minimal damage with moderate inflation, which it is, and 2.7% GDP contraction. And like I said, those are IMF figures. I forgot that he went off on about the supermarkets and that shit like that.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I did actually put something in the chat. There was because there are videos of people going around Russian supermarkets showing the prices and showing that everything's full. So anything saying, oh, well, there's a problem with supermarkets, that's demonstrably not true. And a lot of people... Go on.
Oh, I was just gonna say. I mean, I was like, could I have missed that over the last 10 months or 11 months? Could I have missed that in the headlines? Prices double, automobiles triple in price. Could I have missed that? And I was, as he was saying it, I was looking it up. I couldn't find, and that's something that even if it was not true but plausible, they would have jumped on that, and that's all you would have heard, and that's all you would be hearing. And they would. The one thing that you do hear all the time is about the microchips, which also is not true. That is also not true. But that is something that they repeatedly talk about, and it's obviously not true, because if you know anything about microchips, even if, I mean, look at Iran. They're like, oh yeah, we put these sanctions on Russia. They're not going to be able to get these microchips. The Garan 2 drones, these kamikaze drones, these were originally developed by Iran, has been under sanctions for decades and decades and decades. So where did they get the microchips? It must not be something that is that hard to get, even when you're put under sanctions. It's so obvious.
I was going to say, I actually happen to know something about this, as a long time ago, I was involved in the redesign of the Rapier surface-to-air missile system. So I know, for a start, you can't just, like, you can't, say, rip out a chip from a refrigerator or something. You can't do it. First of all,
No, it's not refrigerators. It's washing machines,
Okay,
goddammit.
I'm sorry, washing machine. But the point is this:
Get your
for a
domestic products right, man. Come on.
For a start, like, all the electronics that go into military hardware have to be radiation hardened. So you don't get that in a washing machine or anything like that.
I
Now,
didn't know that. That's an interesting data point. Good to know.
yeah, yeah, because as part of the redesign of the Rapier system, we had to do the radiation hardening calculations. Essentially, if I remember right, it was basically if the system was in a if it was underground in some shelter or something, and an SS-20 warhead went off over the top of it, it could be wheeled out and it could be used, and it would last much longer than the cruise would. Because that's the insanity of war, you see.
No, so basically, it's radiation hardened in case of the famous EMP, the electromagnetic pulse of a nuclear explosion. Is that correct?
It's not just the EMP, but of course, ionizing radiation is not good for electronics. So even in that ionizing radiation environment, it has to keep on going. It's also the same reason why nuclear warheads have to be refurbished, because obviously the components are you've got radioactive fissile material, and that degrades the electronics. So you have to take them from wherever they are on whatever system they're on, and then you have to refurbish them to ensure that they will actually work when needed.
Oh, because the radiation of the weapon itself degrades its own circuitry, and and that's why they have to refurbish it.
Yes,
I had no idea. I mean, it never occurred to me, to tell you the truth. I mean, Brian, did you know this shit?
It makes sense. I didn't really know about that. I mean, there's when you refurbish, there's a lot of reasons you have to do it, because there's a lot of things that break down. If there's any sort of battery or anything, you have to replace those every so often. So I mean, there's a lot of reasons that makes perfect sense, though.
Okay, so the next slide was diplomatically, the U.S. and NATO are losing the war against Russia. Here, LazerPig gave up the ghost, kind of like, and he'd say yes to anything. The West has been isolated from the rest of the world, while Russia has improved its relations with every country outside of the West. Is this a reasonable statement, or was I like tricking or being unfair somehow?
The West is most definitely isolating itself, and because of what they did to Russia financially, seizing currencies, assets, putting sanctions on absolutely everybody. I mean, everyone else is looking at this and saying, "What if they did that to Russia? They could do that to us next."
Yeah, and I was gonna say, you look at Saudi now; they want to join the BRICS.
Yeah.
Like 10 years ago, just even 5 years ago, you go, if someone told me, oh, well, Saudi Arabia is going to want to join the BRICS, I would have wanted to have them committed to an insane asylum. It's nuts.
Never going to happen.
Absolutely nuts.
Yeah, and it's happening.
How about Turkey? Talking with Syria, and Russia being the one in between? So does this seem like the U.S. is getting the upper hand? I mean, their PR machine is working on a certain segment of the population, but diplomatically, people that can actually see what's going on, they're not buying it. They're not buying it. They see how dangerous this is, and they want it to stop, because they can see how quickly this could get out of control and how other people could get pulled into this, and they don't want to be any part of that. Not anymore.
Yeah, the entire world seems to be moving east at the moment. Even things like gold. You know, who is buying up gold? China and Russia. Everything just seems to be moving inexorably eastwards, and the West. I can't remember who said this, but someone said that the West is like. I think it might be you, Gonzalo. The West is like the grandchildren of Yeah, trust fund babies. They have no connection to the wealth that they have, and
Yep.
they keep spending it and spending and spending it until one day they're completely and utterly broke, and which
Yeah,
is really
I mean,
interesting because there is actually data.
if you're a rich man and you want to ruin your children's future, give them whatever they want, and it's guaranteed that they'll like throw away everything and become destitute and broke. What was the name of the guy? Chat, help me out here. The name of the guy who fathered one of Elizabeth Hurley's kids. He was like some billionaire, trust fund baby, and he literally blew his entire fortune. And at the end of the day, when he was down to nothing, he blew his brains out. Or I don't know if how he committed suicide, but he did commit suicide. A guy called Bingley, something like that, But it's something that happens all the time. It's tragic and pathetic, and I've known a number of them, to tell you the truth, and it's just pathetic. Yeah, I forget the name of the guy, but the first name. No, not Bilzerian. Yeah, okay. So the rest of the world no longer trusts the West because of Minsk II agreements, and also what you were mentioning, Brian, which I should have written there. The fact that the West has no compunction with snatching the assets of foreign countries. That scares the shit. I mean, as an investor, it would scare the shit out of me if some country just decides, just because of my passport, to strip me of my assets in any Stephen Bing, thank you, in any investment area. So yeah.
And how about?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, right. I was going to say, this is not the first time they've done this. In fact, one of the interesting things is that Venezuela has been denied the gold that it holds at the Bank of England because they say Juan Guaido is the actual leader, which obviously he isn't. But because of this, the High Court in London found that they can't give the gold back because it's not been asked for by Juan Guaido, which is completely and utterly insane. And the High Court just went along with it. And it's like, I'm looking at this thinking, okay, well, that's the end of property rights in the UK. Yep. If I want to have assets in the UK, then I have to be able to physically defend them now, not because the courts are worthless.
Yeah. Well, no, you don't physically defend them. You just pull them out when you have the first chance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that slide was honest in your appraisal.
Yeah, it's self-evident. It's self-evident. You can see how the world is pivoting away from the West. And to be honest, a lot of nations have been just waiting for the clock to run out anyway. And this proxy war in Ukraine is accelerating it. And so is the US pressuring China also. It's just going to accelerate it faster.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Next slide. Yeah, militarily. Here's the issue that I know is near and dear to Brian's heart, at least, and certainly to LazerPig. He talks a lot about military shit.
Well, he talks a lot about it, but does he know anything about it? Obviously, no. He knows nothing. I don't know what he thinks his qualifications are. Even if you have no background in it, you can become a researcher if you know how to be honest and look for evidence and use that evidence to build your case. But he was talking about T-34s in Ukraine in the middle of this current conflict. I mean, the guy talks. The guy talks and he panders to his audience.
Yeah, I was going to say, one of the things I noticed about LazerPig is he's talking about, like he was talking about the Abrams tanks, things like this. But the whole point is you have to be able to use all these things together in a combined arms operation. In fact, I don't know. Perhaps Brian might be able to talk about combined arms. Did you ever go to 29 Palms?
No, I never did that. I was in Japan pretty much the whole time, and then we would go to the mainland and to Thailand to do. I was in an artillery unit, so we just did a lot of live fire, and not really combined arms, but even the stuff we were doing was already complicated enough. He's talking about he's like, oh, they have 3,000 or however many Abrams in storage. Okay, who are you giving them to? Do you have 3,000 times 4, because 4 is the size of a Abrams crew. You have to train a crew, an entry-level tanker, 6 months. A commander needs even longer to accumulate the experience to command a tank. So how are you doing that? How are you transferring 3,000 Abrams to Ukraine? You cannot. And then how are you sustaining them on the battlefield? How are you doing that? So there's numbers on a piece of paper, and then there's how it actually works in reality. I had some guy arguing with me the other day about, you can train someone to fix a tank, one of these tanks, a Leopard, an Abrams, a Challenger, 12 weeks, and they could be a tank mechanic. Well, first of all, I was trained to be an electro-optical ordnance repairman. I trained for 9 months. And then when I went to my unit, I didn't know what to do. You handed me something that was broken. I wouldn't know what to do with it. So at best, I was able to help the section head that already has experience, years of experience. I was able to help him, and he would tell me what to do. And then over a year or two, I would start figuring out how to do all of this stuff. So it's not, you train them for 12 weeks, and then they can fix an Abrams. Doesn't work that way in reality. Also, an Abrams isn't just an engine. It's got electro-optics, has fire control. You have to train. That's what I was trained to fix, by the way, M1A1 fire control and optics. That takes even longer to learn how to do. And then when you're out in the field, there's things that you can't even fix. You just diagnose what's wrong with it, and then you send it back to the rear. That's where it goes. And so this is what Ukraine would be doing in the middle of a war, which is implausible. It just doesn't add up in reality.
What's interesting is that a lot of these guys, these armchair generals, right? Many times they do talk about logistics, but they don't talk about training as a part of logistics. I mean, to tell you the honest truth, Brian, you'd be the one to correct me on this. Would you say that training is a part of logistics in this regard? Because you have to add that component in to any calculation as to when you can get some piece of gear or not, right?
Well, yeah, I think you could play a lot of word games defining logistics, sustainment, maintenance, all of these things in training, but you have to mention all of them. You cannot just talk about, you're absolutely right. You cannot just talk about logistics. You have to talk about everything else that goes along with it, because these are all crucial components that the tank will not operate if you don't have a trained crew inside it to operate it. Even if you could move it to the battlefield with ammunition, fuel, spare parts, all of the other little things that it needs to operate day to day. Even in that case, you still need to have trained manpower to operate it, trained manpower to fix it. And these are things that Ukraine is not going to be able to do in the short term. There is a reason why a military spends a couple of years to incorporate a new weapon system. And if you follow military matters and you hear about a new weapon system being developed and then being sent to the army in the field, there's a very long process of doing that. The Bayraktar, the TB2 Bayraktar that Ukraine got from Turkey, that was over the course of several years. Yeah. So that was over several years, and they still didn't do them any good. Bayraktar did them no good. Do you hear about Bayraktars anymore? And now they want to send all of these new weapon systems and get them up and running.
I bought the mug and they seized. I'm sorry. I'm not laughing at I'm not laughing at any side. I'm just laughing at the circumstances of getting the stupid mug. But yeah. Okay. So we've been going on for like over 3 hours. I can go. I'm wired, to tell you the truth, and so I could go for another 3 hours, quite frankly.
There are about 3,500 people still watching,
Yeah, 3,500 people who have nothing better to do than to stare at our ugly faces, or avatars, as the case may be. Wow, God bless you all, one and all.
It's like a cleansing process. They had to listen to all of that nonsense. Now they want to actually listen to a serious conversation about the issues.
Yeah. So let me go through militarily. Okay. The argument, because here I presented basically an argument, and the premises of the argument go as follows. The conflict has devolved into an attritional war. And in an attritional war, conquered territory does not matter. All that matters is annihilating the opposing army's forces. The US and NATO does not have the industrial capacity to replenish Zelensky regime losses on the battlefield. Since the Russians have more men and materiel, they will inevitably win. Therefore, based on these 4 premises, prolonging the war will do nothing except destroy the Ukrainian nation and people. Is this true or false? Are any of these premises false? And is the conclusion invalid?
It's happening right now. We see it happening right now. Why are they sending Bradleys and Modders and all of these other vehicles and artillery pieces? Because Ukraine had hundreds of tanks, hundreds of APCs, infantry fighting vehicles, 1,800 artillery pieces. They had a very large military in the beginning. It's all gone. Yeah. It's all gone. You can't. They're like, well, no, they have more tanks now than they did before. If that was the case, they would have to find more tankers. They'd have to expand their ability to maintain them. And then the U.S. is sending all of this extra armor. So that means you need to find even more tankers, more crews for these vehicles. It doesn't add up. It only makes sense if they're losing everything and they're just sending stuff to Ukraine, no matter how inappropriate. So they're not in the field with just small arms. That's what this is all about. And it's exactly what they did with Syria. They just kept sending them anything they could scrape together and send to Syria. That's what they sent. Didn't matter how unrealistic it was. They were talking about standing up armies, training them in Jordan, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and then sending them into Syria. And it didn't work because that's not how reality works. You cannot build an army out of scratch in the middle of a war. That doesn't happen. Not in modern warfare. It doesn't.
Yeah. And okay, so the conclusion that prolonging this conflict will lead to nothing except the destruction of the Ukrainian nation and people. That's a valid conclusion based on these.
I would slightly take a slight issue with this because you say it will do nothing. Well, I disagree. I think there's a lot of the military-industrial complex in the US that will make a huge amount of money.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Let me rephrase that. It will do nothing positive to the Ukrainian nation and people other than destroy it and tear it apart. Let me just narrow it down there because you're absolutely right. If I'm the CEO of Raytheon or General Dynamics or whoever is building these things, I'm happy as a pig in shit. Forgive the pun. So yeah, I mean, for them it was fantastic. Okay, and the final slide, which is sort of like, I mean, I don't think that even LazerPig would have denied it. Oh well, we never got through it.
No, I think he did. I think he did because you were saying something about it's a war of attrition. It's not about territory, and he was talking about everyone in the beginning. I think he was just being sarcastic at that point. He was saying about how in the beginning everyone was talking about how much territory Russia is taking. It doesn't matter what military bloggers, commentators, and analysts are saying unless they're sitting there in the war room with Russia's general staff. They don't know. Just think about it this way though. Russian President Vladimir Putin said at the very beginning of it, the goal was to demilitarize, denazify Ukraine. So demilitarize. That means defeat their army, not take territory, defeat their army.
Yeah.
And yes, also secure the Donbas region. That was the third objective, which they're doing.
Yeah.
But the first objective is demilitarization, which means war of attrition. That's what they're doing. They are going to destroy Ukraine's military. They are destroying Ukraine's military. They are thoroughly destroying it. And they're not just demilitarizing Ukraine, they are demilitarizing its Western sponsors.
Wait. Sorry, hang on a second. Somebody's saying here, Russia begins Belarusian offensive. I don't know if this is bullshit or it's for real. So I'm
posting I have to check it. Somebody
chat,
fact check that.
Chat, do me a favor. Why don't you fact check? Is a Belarusian offensive happening at this time? Putin don't surf. That's a good line. Okay, I'm gonna take this comment off because we don't know if this is accurate or not. Because shit, anything could happen. No. Chat is saying no source questionable. Okay, so forget about that. Oh, Todd is saying my speculation. Oh, next time you have a speculation, Todd, and for everybody, it's perfectly fine, but just say speculation or on spec, so that we all know that it's not breaking news. Okay, so and then socially there was some other stuff, but okay, let's wind this down because we've gone 3.25 hours. We've tried our audience's patience. I know poor Brian wants to get some shut eye. He's gonna have his kids, jumping on him at 7 a.m, and he's gotten like 3 hours.
That is a fact. Yeah, that is a fact.
That is a fact. And so we're gonna wind it down, gentlemen. Just stick around so I can have a few final words with you before you go. Chat. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the broadcast. It was different, and this is not the usual. On Thursday, like I said, I'm going to have Jackson Hinkle and What If Alt History, I'm really looking forward to that conversation because he's a very interesting guy. And that's all for now. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this shit show, and I will catch you next time. Take it easy.